All right, let's do it. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Group Up Podcast. We're here for the State of Overwatch debate. That's right. We are going to discuss all things Overwatch and only Overwatch. No other games shall be mentioned today at all. I mean, they will, inevitably. I know one of my guests is for sure is going to spite bring it up, but let me introduce them first before you guess which of the three that might be. In the bottom right, what does that say on your t-shirt? Is this says, I am the Phoenix? It's Coach Spilo.
I am the Phoenix. Yeah, my wife started an MMA gym years ago after the original one closed down in COVID, and so I have a lot of the merch, and I think the shirts are pretty cool. So
Yo,
it's kind of unrelated. I'm just wearing it, so
get that link.
Yeah.
Plug it. Get that link. Let's get this merch going off the ground. How are you doing today, Spilo?
Good. I think here's the real question. Who's going to complain the most today? Who's going to be the most negative person between me, Realth, and AVRL? Like, it's actually, talk about having the Avengers squad with like Flats in the gang. This is like the negativity complaining squad, you know? Like, so it doesn't matter how perfect it is. It's just going to be complaining the entire time. And about different things too. It's going to be great. We're going to disagree about what sucks. That's going to be the best part, I think.
The Neg-Vengers. That's what you guys are. You're here to just bring the mood down. Okay, well, I'll go next in the top left, or at least of my screen. I think actually in the Discord call too, which is nice that it timed out that way. Here is AVRL. AVRL, what's up?
I'm going to disagree straight away. There's not much to complain about. The only thing I'm going to disagree with is that I actually don't have any. Well, how is this the complaining Avengers code? There's actually nothing really to complain about, in my opinion. Also, I forgot to bring my Marvel Rivals shirt, my I am Lunar Snow shirt. You got your I am Phoenix shirt. I am Lunar Snow shirt. That one's in the wash. Unfortunately,
this is not a Rivals reference, but yeah.
Yeah, you guys, we don't have a dress code, unfortunately.
No. Yeah. SVV told us to bring all of our favorite Marvel Rivals shirts, and I forgot my Spilo's the only one that remember it is. So, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Rel's wearing his Black Panther shirt.
Here, so. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, okay. That actually leads me well to talk about our new appearance. So this first time on the podcast, very excited. Lots of people have been telling me to get him on the call, so he's finally here. Realth, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I've actually been having more fun with Overwatch than I've had in years because I joined a tournament and competitive play. Oh, that's a lot of fun. So yeah, I've been having a great time. Aside from that, obviously I've got loads of complaints, but they can go later, right?
Yeah, you're slightly biased because you're happy, but you know, Spilo will hopefully bring the negativity, and all you guys will start ranting. This is actually, by the way, if you welcome to the podcast, one of the tropes is we start off happy, and then someone brings up something that upsets them, and then everybody remembers all the things they hate, and then 2 hours in, we're all just deep into our own personal rants. But yeah, welcome to the call. Do you want to maybe actually give you, like, we don't do this too often, but do you want to give like a brief intro to like how you would describe yourself as a creator, just for anyone who's listening for the first time?
Yeah, I'm basically a freelance coach that has made. I've had the pleasure of making enough money to live for a couple of years of coaching and part-time content creation while doing other things. I've been talking about Overwatch since 2017-ish, where back in the days when I was rambling into a mic that didn't work. But yeah, I've been around with the entire time. I am the 6v6 advocate, more than Samito, I would say, in terms of I don't know, he's probably louder than me, but I probably have more arguments, I guess. But yeah, I've been around forever, and it's an absolute pleasure to be on here finally.
Yeah, great to have you. And that sound you heard was the collective either cheers or groans from listeners who are like, exactly. Yeah, another 6v6, or like, oh, not another one of these fuckers, dude, Jesus Christ. Of course, we have AVRL, who was part of the original debate. AVRL, it's actually crazy thinking back, like when we had that talk, 5v5, 6v6 was like not even on the cards. It was just a conceptual discussion, and here we are. Like it's
come.
I know, crazy, right?
And it ended up being a big deal for Blizzard in terms of, you look back at their, there was a recent thing that Aaron Keller did where it was like, you guys saw the conference he did? Was it like for GDC or something? Where he was kind of like giving a big talk, a couple of hours talk about the resurgence of Overwatch and his journey through that. And he brought up the whole 5v5, 6v6 thing, saying that Team 4 should have addressed it way earlier because the community started to really talk about it. I would like to think that SVB, this show, and the people that were part of that discussion were maybe kind of spearheaded that discussion, really pushing that forward. But no, it's fun to see Aaron kind of give a nod to that discussion because Team 4 definitely were not at all recognizing that whole debate for a while, and
Yeah.
eventually they did.
It's like a
And I think
metaphor.
the game,
It was like a
the
metaphor for
game
the
ended up
game, you
being
know?
better for it.
I think it pretty like you can't bury your head in the sand about these things. If there's a community like talking point and you seem to be ignoring it, I think it just gets worse over time, honestly. And I think he learned a lot from that.
I think
Yeah,
addressing 66, like I said, was like a metaphor for just addressing elephants in the room in general and just
Yeah.
being willing to kind of like ignoring 66 is seen as like it wasn't just the format, it was also just like ignoring a very common complaint or controversy, which probably needed to be addressed no matter what side
Yeah.
of the fence that you sit on.
yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll come to that whole discussion point, I think, because that'll be a relevant category to just talk about how the devs are doing as a team. But let's set the scene first, as we always like to do. So I'm gonna go around. I'm gonna ask each of you guys to give me your summary of the state of Overwatch in like a few sentences. This is also going to be not just the neggers, but the yappers. This is probably going to be the yapper call because I've got guys here who with strong opinions who like to voice them, which is great. That's why we have them. But this could be going a while. So let's try and keep it succinct. Your overall summary of the state of Overwatch, starting with Spilo.
I think Overwatch, the community's perception is always like either lagging behind or at this exact point in time and not like really looking forward to like the trend, I guess. And so I think a lot of the guys in this call, we see the trend. So sometimes we're more positive about things when things don't look so good because we can see the vision of where it's going, and vice versa is true as well. Right now with Overwatch, I think in terms of content, in terms of like cultural relevance, it's like doing really, really well, as good as it has any right to be. And my more negativity is going to be a lot of that cultural relevancy and community perception is riding off of two factors. One is just a lot of content, which is always fun, and two is it's been a quality game. However, sometimes it can be difficult to really do both perfectly well. And I think more of my negativity is going to revolve, as I know Ralph will agree, that there have been some corners cut recently that have not only immediately compromise my enjoyment of some of these new content pieces, but also definitely raises some questions of like, oh boy, I hope this is not the trend moving forward, because I know everybody's super hyped right now, but this is not what got us into the position of where we are right now. It was continuing to do things well. And I think there have been several categories where things have not been done well. So you have to stay vigilant. Anybody that's been a back-to-back champion in any sport knows how difficult it is to repeat. And I think like Overwatch is kind of in that position where it's like they got to repeat, they got to keep repeating, they can't get complacent, you can't keep content maxing. So
I mean, I'll throw it right up to Realth because you kind of already earmarked something that he may be interested in bouncing off of, and then we'll come to the positive figure that is AVRL. So Realth, you go ahead.
Yeah, so looking at player-based stats for Steam, which I think there's no reason to think that it doesn't pan out over the other platforms, roughly, approximately. So it's gone from 107 to 88 last week in terms of 1,000 player base. So it was, I think, 130, 107, 107, 88. So it's had a little bit of a dip, but we kept that player base for like a long time after the season launch. There was that normal like dip that you'd expect, and then it just kind of like stabilized for a bit. Now we're getting probably people leaving more through other things going on in the gaming space and from burnout or whatever's annoying them this time about the game. This time they come back, I guess. In terms of the philosophy, I think Overwatch has changed like quite a bit. It's quite clear that we're moving faster than we ever have. The idea of like move often, keep the reputation going, move fast, and then not the Lego on the floor and like let the kids pick it back up and put it back on the table, right? Like we just continuously do that enough, and they won't realize that a couple of things are broken, right? Or a couple of things aren't working properly. So like I think there's kind of like two main like drivers that fight against each other. One is the content cycle, right? Just getting stuff into your game to make it be the thing, like the Fortnite kind of like production cycle. And then the other one is the game just being perceived as being worth people's time. So either that's gameplay or that's competitive integrity. And I think these things kind of like work against each other quite a lot of the time. You can't do both. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out, because I think right now we're on the content production side And maybe we need to pull back towards the gameplay side, but I won't go into any specifics because, quite frankly, we've got a lot of time to talk to each other.
We do, with lots of worms and to uncan. But Avril, I will let you give your thoughts first. What these guys are actually a little bit more negative than I might have expected. You, on the other hand, were saying there's nothing to complain about. Well, here's some guys with some complaints.
I know this is why Spilo said it was going to be a negativity podcast. I'm like, what do you mean? What's there to be so negative about? This is the first time in a long time, maybe even maybe not in ever, because obviously Overwatch was at the head of the front, at the tip of the spear for the genre for a long time, and I think for the first time since the release, Overwatch has returned there. This is the first time where clearly Overwatch has been the number one game in the genre, in the space, in just about every single metric. Players coming back, popularity rising again, beating its competition massively in viewership and also player base in terms of the numbers. You can even just see it in player sentiment on all the different socials. You look at the various subreddits for the different games, the level of complaining, the level of "I'm leaving" Marvel Rivals or Overwatch posts increasing substantially. The number of "Hi, I just got here. Welcome to the r/Overwatch. I just got here into Overwatch. This is my first time playing. What do I need to know?" kind of posts going up. You would never sing that shit a year ago. So, best place the game has been in a long time. I don't think that's really arguable. I think that's like just the raw reality of it. And any sort of problems that might still be here at the moment, I mean, it's just like I'm not saying the game is perfect, because obviously things will always need to move in the correct direction and all that. But like, I mean, it's just so minor at the moment, in my opinion, compared to how good everything else is. And a lot of it too is just the fact that people realizing that the last year of work is starting to really pay off. Because if you just dropped in 5 new heroes in a vacuum into where Overwatch was maybe say 2 years ago, I don't think it would be that effective. I think people would play the game, look at it and be like, yeah, this is not really worth my time. But there's been a full year plus worth of groundwork done on top of everything else, that all that Blizzard really needed was the big marketing push to say, here is an opportunity for you to jump back in and try it out. And then you do try it out, and then you get to see all the work that's been put into the game in that past year, and people being like, this is not just 5 new heroes. This is like however many years it's been since you last touched the game, that plus the new 5 heroes.
Obviously, I presume you're referring to like all the little changes, like bans and perks, and like
perks,
UI
bans,
overall,
stadium,
map
all of it,
voting,
everything.
Yeah,
all
like
the
all
new
these.
heroes,
self-love.
all the map voting, every single change that came on through, everything that like had to come and go, and all the decisions made, and all the mistakes made and fixed, all that kind of stuff.
Hey guys, SEB here, and welcome back to the Group Up podcast. The podcast is back for the short term, but its long-term future remains undecided. If you'd like to support this content and want to see the continued release of episodes, then please consider supporting the podcast directly. You can sign up to the SV Patreon for a monthly pledge, or make a direct one-time donation via PayPal, the links to both of which will be in the video description and the pinned comment to this video. Every contribution, big or small, really helps my content keep going, so if you've enjoyed the podcast now or in the past, then please do consider supporting. Otherwise, I just want to thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you'll keep enjoying this content. And to that end, back to the discussion. Well, I think maybe that's a good place to start then. Maybe that's a good first major area to go into, is that, even, so my state of Overwatch is that, I hadn't been, I had been like 2 years since I actually played the game, over a year since I had made any content relating directly to the game. So I've been back for like, I'd say like 2 weeks. I think yesterday was my 14th day back or something like that. So even me, in my completely out of touch space with Overwatch, I was hearing like, hey, yo, this shit is fire, actually. Like, this is good now. Everyone's like, actually, give it, like, let go of their bitterness and resentment. I mean, I don't think that'll ever be fully true, but a large section of it that, like, we're actually looking at it with some level of objectivity, and actually it's good. It's not the doo-doo garbage that everyone said it was. Actually seems to be playing pretty well. So that's the kind of space that I entered into. So let's talk about public perception. Let's talk about like how has the image of Overwatch shifted, especially in light of the fact that, there's the elephant in the room. There is this other game, Marvel Rivals, that's kind of come along and reignited the genre in some regards. Like, there's so much more discussion around the hero shooter genre now. So, Realth, I'll take it to you first. how do you view the evolution of the public's image of Overwatch?
Yeah. And to be clear here, we're going to get a little negative at some point in this podcast, but there is probably nothing that I would change in what they've done over the past couple of years, aside from things that are completely unreasonable, such as complete revert the game to 6v6, etc. That I would change in any way, because Aaron has completely revitalized this game. I will literally go to friends that I haven't spoken of in a while, or people at work, and they will be playing Overwatch and they will be saying good things about Overwatch. Overwatch is in the best place it has been for I don't know, for like 6 years at this point. It is doing incredible. In terms of public perception, I don't think there is anything to change. Um, I I'll just leave it at that, to be honest, because realistically, aside from that, I can start putting butts on it, but there's nothing to butt there.
Okay, well let's not keep some big butts in and displease Sir Mix-a-Lot. AVRL, I sort of saw you kind of really mulling that idea over. Obviously, you brought up this public perception thing. So do you want to maybe elaborate on your point, and then we'll take it to Spilo on just how the public have responded? I know you've kind of been quite. I saw on social media you've been quite involved in the Rivals Overwatch, let's say friendly competition.
I think it's always been a public perception issue for like the longest time. I think the amount of time the game's been truly really bad hasn't been that long compared to how long it's been good for. Considering the start of the game and where we are now, I think the public's perception, like if you looked at where the game was in the last year, at various points over the course of the game last year, I think everyone that stayed with the game already knew it was moving in a really good direction. And everyone who came in was like, you know what? I should have given this game a bit more of a chance. And all the negativity you saw, particularly from the rival side, was so much old shit that wasn't even applicable in the game anymore. They're complaining about like things that are like genuinely like 3, 4, 5 years old, complaints about the game that don't exist anymore. And you see how out of touch people's complaints were. It's like, dude, if you played the game now, you would realize how wrong those complaints were, but people didn't give it a chance. So I think a lot of it was just raw public perception, and all that needed to happen was people needed a reason to try the game again, to see that the game had actually improved massively. And again, not just because of the new season 1, but because of all the positive changes that took place over the past year or so. So like that's and the public perception is to the place now where, like I said, you see it on the socials, but you see it on the content creator side as well. You see it on the big content creators. Tim the Tatman's a big one where like his audience and his crowd are super negative on Overwatch, and even Tim's like slowly turning that around because he started playing Overwatch again, especially early on. His entire chat was super shitting all over Spotlight, but you know what? Nothing denies the raw stat line of the game's actual numbers jumping up in undeniable ways, to the point where like the people on the rival side who are like so invested in that debate can't even use Steam numbers to clown on the game anymore. In fact, you can use Steam numbers of Overwatch to count on Rivals now, which is hilarious to me. You can't even deny it. Like you can't even deny that the game is in an incredible state, and all it takes is for people to have a look at it and try it again.
Yeah, very good to hear. Spilo, are there any wrenches in this bright picture that's being painted? Are there any dark spots that you can see on the public perception of Overwatch?
Not in public perception, for sure. I kind of agree with what's already been said. I think one of the things that Overwatch did really well is they kind of let Rivals have its day without trying to rush things. I think we saw that really starting with the perks, right? Like there was, if you guys remember the December 2024, January 2024, was that when Rivals dropped somewhere around there? I think
It was
were
December. I think.
Super. Yeah, it was like Overwatch is dead, and Overwatch is just doesn't try. And then they kind of like let some of the negativity of the Rivals start. And then I don't think this was purposefully timed, but like they just stayed true to their schedule, right? And then Perks drops. And obviously Perks, the whole the initial spotlight wasn't as big of a deal as this most recent one, but it was, people were like, oh wow, that was actually pretty soft from Overwatch, and like maybe I'll go try Overwatch again. And like they focused less on the comparison and more on just like doing their own thing. And I think that's kind of like the main theme, whether we're talking about Rivals or not, is that Overwatch just focused on making good content, making a good game, and then having these marketing events occasionally that really that really brought new eyes towards the good things. I mean, you see it even with the Blizzard Spotlight this past year. the Overwatch Spotlight in 2025 was so successful that they did a global Blizzard Spotlight this year for all of the Blizzard games. I don't know if it was all of them, but they did one for like Diablo, I think. They did one for freaking, I don't play Blizzard games, World of Warcraft, whatever else. So obviously this works. You have this big content drop. And if the content is good, and as we've already said, the content has been good for. Okay, this is a hot take. I'm not a huge fan of all the changes of Season 9, but I think Season 9 was like the season for Overwatch 2 because it was the line in the sand where the team publicly communicated more and were willing to take risks with the game. And so whether you like Season 9 or not, I think it was a mixed bag, but it was showcased a willingness to take risks and commitment to like, actually, let's just try something. Let's just go. And I think Aaron talked a little bit about that at the convention that AVRL was mentioning, right? And I think like that was like, so right around a little over 2 years ago was like the moment where you could tell like Overwatch 2 was like actually really hustling, and probably even sooner than that, but at least not publicly. And so all of us in here have known that for quite some time. AVRL said like the last year, I think Overwatch has been great, right? Even before that, it's been moving in a good direction. But obviously, public perception is fickle. It's slow. It lags behind, and it also needs its flashy lights, like Realth talks about, to draw attention towards what we already know.
Jingly keys.
The jingling of the keys, right? So for me, it's just like that's kind of how like the live service gaming audience, but those people are fickle and they'll move on from game to game chronically. Most gamers are like that. So for us, hardcore Overwatch fans, the key jangling will fade away, and then we're gonna be like, all right, what's going to be the next 9 months? What's it going to look like in terms of balance and design and communication and quality of life, right? Like, what's that going to look like? Because you can't jangle keys forever, as Rivals is learning. Eventually, even babies will get bored with key jangling, right? So that's kind of be my main point. I like the content side, and I think public perception is great, but I think the public perception is never the public will be like, whoa! Anyway, right? Like, that's just how people are. So you can't keep that forever.
Yeah, I wanted to actually quickly, two things that came into my mind that I'm not sure will be worth on their own an entire section, but I think worth putting as part of this one. Two things that relate, I think, to the wider public's knowledge of Overwatch is obviously the fact that they no longer are Overwatch 2. It's back to Overwatch, right? I think that's something worth discussing, and whether we agree with that decision, whether we think it was like a worthwhile decision. And then also recently, of course, the forgotten man, Jeff Kaplan, has been in the media cycle recently. Obviously, this big interview that he did on a podcast, some dude. I watched the podcast, and he didn't really go into too much specifics of like, this is what was going on in the Overwatch team. It was more of a general, this is what it was like creating the game, and this is what it was like as like the development team. But there were a few bits in there, that he kind of dropped that made people start to reassess Overwatch again. Like, I heard some people being like, oh my God, I can't believe this is what it's like in the Blizzard, internal system. Like, this makes me really, nervous about Overwatch. It makes me not really want Overwatch to do too well because it feels like there's all this nefarious shit going on behind the scenes. So let's talk about those two things. You can kind of springboard either side that you want to. I'm going to take it to AVRL first. I feel like he's probably got the most spicy take coming in. So AVRL, what do you got for me?
Jeff Kaplan, king of vague posting, spends 5 hours talking on a podcast. 20 minutes is like Overwatch, It's like, all right, dude. And doesn't actually go into the real details that you actually want him to go into. Doesn't go into the part where he like straight up says, this is why I left. Never answers that question directly. Just vague post kings the entire way through for 5 hours. All good. Don't worry about it.
Well, I should say for his sake that, he probably still has some NDA shit. I mean, they did bleep out some number stuff out of his non-disclosure agreement. So who knows how much he's limited to say.
But yeah, look, there's the corporate side. I get it. And I don't defend any of that. I think that's all terrible. But that's also like every company. You go to EA, same shit. You go to Ubisoft, same shit. Riot, same shit. Every single, number crunching, suit tie motherfucker over there who's just like, make money now and I don't care what it takes. And if you don't make the number of monies and dollars I want you to make, I will fire everybody and it will be your fault. Yes, that guy exists in every single large company of that side. And yes, I did watch the podcast / listen to the podcast for the person in chat that's wondering. Thank you very much. Yeah, I had problems with a lot of that stuff. So the part about him saying like, I was pressured and all of that kind of stuff. He actually didn't even mention that much about Kodak, which I was surprised by. I thought he would like probably bring up Kodak a little bit because, from what I understand, Kodak was a big factor in like pushing the whole sequel as well. But obviously the whole him blame the Overwatch League part really rubbed me the wrong way. Now, look, I won't defend the part where like were there like developmental resources put into certain things, yes, but also at the same time, what did they really do here? They made skins. What were the skins? The skins were the default skins with different colorways. They didn't make new skins. They just added skins onto the existing default skins. Didn't have to create new ones. Just put colors, like 3 different colors on the skin with a logo. Boom, that was your skin. To me, maybe I'm like underestimating effort. Doesn't seem like a big deal to me. Second of all, stuff like the replay viewer, that benefits everybody. That's like a kind of feature that other games like Valorant are begging for. They are begging Riot for that type of shit in the game. So to pretend like, oh, we had to put all this resource into the Overwatch League for what? A replay viewer that everyone benefits from? Shut up, dude. It's so stupid. And then what else? Yeah. Oh, by the way, Jeff, I don't remember the Overwatch League asking you to make a sequel to shut down the game for however many years you shut down the game for, or to ask that you made PvE. I don't think Overwatch League requested any of that. In fact, all of that is actually detrimental to the Overwatch League. Thank you very much. So to say that it was like Overwatch League's fault, it's like, dude, you made Overwatch 2. That was your call between you, Kodak, and whoever the hell else was in that meeting. You wanted to push into PvE direction. They even put up the graphic in that podcast of like the crawl, walk, run thing, and it literally said PvP game, PvE game, MMO. You can go to the podcast. The graphic was on that podcast. I saw that shit. Okay, the end goal was he wanted to make the MMO again. Overwatch League didn't ask him to do that. Why would the Overwatch League want a PvE game and an MMO game for a strictly esports competitive PvP experience? Doesn't make any sense. So all this shit he's saying, it's just backwards. It's like, dude, oh my god, it was so infuriating for him to like lay all this blame on the Overwatch League for shit that was his decision. His decision to push into PvE. His decision to go to Overwatch 2. His decision to put the game on a hiatus for several years. How does that benefit the Overwatch League? How does that benefit the game? How does that benefit anybody? He is at a fault for that, and he's trying to push the blame on other people. Shut the fuck up.
I don't know. I think there's some nuance there. I think this is what like happened. I also watched the interview, and the TLDR is like, you have this long-term vision of crawl, walk, run, because that's what Titan didn't do. Titan tried to skip the run and failed miserably, right? So let's crawl, walk, run. They crawl, they go, holy frick, crawling is great. This crawling is amazing. This crawling tech is actually broken. This game is elite. Game of the year. This is amazing. But he talked about it like the dev, like, and I think Jeff falls into this. He talked about like some of the other devs are like ready to move on, but clearly Jeff was part of that development team. At least he was torn. Like the guy clearly wanted to move on to Overwatch 2 as well. Like I know he was like, oh, but I was part of the PvP thing. Partly true, but also BS on that one. The guy wanted to move on. So then there's this opportunistic Bobby Kotick that goes, holy crap, this game is amazing. Let's esports this. Let's sideways. So that pulls Jeff in that direction. And Jeff did say that he was part of that as well. So then what happens is like, for lack of a better term, it's like a American football audible, like a last second, not even a last second, but a pivot with like what the purpose of the game should be, to live service, to esports, to whatever else. And then at the same time, Jeff Kaplan has like suits asking him like, where is Overwatch 2? Where is Overwatch 2? I will say that I can sympathize with Jeff being pulled in 2 different directions at once and not really knowing, like, do we just abandon Overwatch 2? There's no way that that's going to work. I'm going to get like crucified if that happens. Versus, okay, do we just commit to the original plan? But I do agree with AVRL that Jeff, I think in the podcast, was like a little vague posting, because we do know, especially from Play Nice, that like the whole concept of that Bobby literally offered to just have an Overwatch 1 team and an Overwatch 2 team, and that was just never addressed during the podcast at all. It's like, well, Jeff, you could have given up your baby and let other people develop it, right? But that just never happened. And you can hear it a lot. Like, Jeff is the small team guy, the small development team. And I think at that point, Jeff was just like, frick this whole thing. This Overwatch, the crawl did way too well. I want to move on. Bobby's clearly running away with this. This isn't going to work. And I think Overwatch League's issues were separate to that. But yeah, it was very odd to me to like blame a lot of it on the Overwatch League, because as Avril said, a lot of the development for the Overwatch League wasn't really that much, at least from a noob's perspective. But also, it's like, bro, we had nothing for years, like just nothing for years and years and years. So like saying that, like, oh, I did care about the PvP, the team did care about the PvP. No, you didn't. You didn't. So that's just not true at all, or at least not enough. So I'm not blaming Jeff for that necessarily, but like from an outsider's perspective, like it really is kind of like ridiculous to say that like, oh, Overwatch League is what killed Overwatch 1 development, or like, or what killed the whole transition. Because as I said, it's like, dude, nobody wanted Overwatch 2, man. We wanted Overwatch 1. Like your masterpiece was your first step, you know? And
So
I think that their inability to like adapt there was like the reason why Overwatch 2 failed, I think.
but just in the interest, because I know, I love hearing you guys' thoughts, but I also know you've all got your rants you want to go on. So I can see Realth just like fidget. He's got I'm fidgeting because I'm desperate to say something, body language. So I'm going to maybe cut you guys off in between here and there to let others chime in. So Realth, I can see you really want to chime in on this. So I'm going to let you go.
I have not watched the podcast, but however, I have seen the quote about him being called into a room and being told basically this amount of money, otherwise this amount of people go for the company. And while that is ghoulish and evil, it is also, I don't know, where was PV at that point? And it seemed like he had already at that point rejected the offer of more money, more development, and being able to do both at the same time. So it really is a question of how much of this was just you rejecting, and I know he didn't want to do everything. That's kind of like the point. Didn't want to do the PvP at the same time as the PvE. But yeah, like how much development time did it really take? Like how much would it take to support Overwatch 1 PvP as well? Like they were still developing heroes for Overwatch 2, I would assume. Apart from that, I think numbers patches was good enough to keep the game on better life support than it was, quite frankly, but instead it was just nothing and a turn off of the support when I'm like, one guy is numbers patches, right? Obviously, it's not one guy because you have to ship to consoles and other things like that. Any patch turns out to be a lot of work, but the amount of effort you have to put in to get a lot more back seems very minimal to me.
I feel like Jeff Kaplan was never the guy to run Overwatch 1 after 2019 and 2020. Like he was clearly had already shifted his mindset moving forward. And I think the best case scenario for that organization were for him to just cut ties and move on to Overwatch 2 and just like let somebody else run the game. I think even like from their balanced decisions and knowing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes with how he understood the game and how limited his viewpoint of, I think, even like game design and hero design was. I'm not saying that I disagree with all of his ideas, but I think like you look at like what Overwatch 2 has done since and Overwatch 1 has done since then. It's like, I think Jeff was just never the guy to keep Overwatch 1, and he just needed to let somebody else handle it for him. Now, whether they would have done as good of a job, whether PvE, whether Overwatch 2 would have actually worked, I don't know. But like, it sucks that like, Jeff was like just not letting somebody else run the game for him. And it's like, there's you guys know this. We literally had nothing. Like Echo in 2019 or 2020 was like the last drop, and like we just had nothing, like nothing. So like I don't care whose fault that is, but that's just inexcusable. That's just totally inexcusable.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like I don't think his team, maybe it was him as well. They were not prepared for the level of success that Overwatch had in 2016, and they were not prepared to support it as a live service game. When you find out how small Team 4 was when they actually launched Overwatch initially, how small that team was, you're like, bro, you cannot run a live service game with the amount of devs you have compared to the amount of devs. You need like an army. You need hundreds, if not like 1,000 devs to do like a Fortnite style live service, a League of Legends type of thing, a Valorant type of thing. Well, now that we have an Overwatch, the Overwatch current team is under Aaron is gigantic. And that's actually what you need to be able to put out the level of content at the pace it needs to be put out on.
Yeah.
And then to pivot entirely into a PvE without, allowing a different team or just upping the size of your team to also account for the continued development of PvP. I mean, there's just so much short-sightedness in there. And then to lay it on Overwatch League, like I said, Overwatch League didn't ask for any of that. Overwatch League, that is all detrimental to the Overwatch League, by the way. Overwatch League, it makes no sense to blame Overwatch League for any of that. Beyond that as well, people don't realize this because I guess people don't understand business, but Overwatch League, it operated completely separately to Team 4. Okay, the devs were not fucking making the rule sets and standing behind the PCs, the players, doing referee work and making the tournament rules. That was, Overwatch League had its own staff completely separate to Team 4, doing its own thing. And yeah, I understand there was probably some development time put into the Overwatch League to help them out because they need to make some stuff for that. But I would argue a lot of that was good for the game's overall player base anyway. And
Yes.
look,
Yes.
if that was enough to derail the development of Overwatch 2, that's still your fault, buddy Jeff, because you could have hired more people. You could have had more people on board. Considering you shut down the game for a couple of years, I mean, dude, that, like Spilo said, it's inexcusable. He had every option, he had every opportunity to avoid that situation, and it came at him fast, hit him in the face, and ended up being absolutely terrible for the game. And for the longest time, for the past several years, we've had to make up, say we, but like Overwatch has had to make up for that. Aaron's team has had to make up for that, and it's taken until 2026 to finally make up for that.
Rhetorical question for you, Avril. What would Overwatch 1 development died faster without the Overwatch League? That's a funny question for you. Did the Overwatch League actually force Overwatch 1 development? Like you talk about like Rollock and Brigners and 222 and the replay viewer and all these other things. Like would that stuff have even happened without the Overwatch League? You know, so like I think two things can be true, right? Like like diverted resources put a lot of stress, the crappy CFO stuff. Jeff is like some serious ethical questions going on behind what was going on behind that. Like that's just ridiculous, right?
I can tell you this.
But two things can be true at the same time. Like I just from what little I know, I didn't have a lot of faith in Jeff's leadership at that point in time, right? And I think like that's like I think the major question here. So like we're here analyzing Jeff Kaplan, we're not here analyzing the CFO. That's like comically, caricaturely, stupidly, and wrong. Like that's why we're not debating that, right? Obviously, everybody agrees that that's dumb. So I don't want to put it all on Jeff, but I think let's put it this way: Jeff Kaplan continues to be a very complex situation, complex person.
I'll say this. This is what Overwatch League brought to the table towards the end, whether people like it or not. I know Frito has mixed feelings on this, and I've privately debated him on this. That could have been a good podcast. No, maybe not. I don't know. But Overwatch League did force the hand of Team 4 in the sense that Overwatch 2's release timeline was very likely pushed forward in terms of when it actually came out to the public.
It definitely did. It definitely did.
2022.
Yes.
2022, right? So
the alpha,
Overwatch League. So because Overwatch League had ownership stake, legally speaking, they had the power to push the Team 4 to be like, yo, where's the game? Because you're fucking our league right now. Proof in the pudding that, by the way, it wasn't good for Overwatch League for Jeff to fucking put the game on hold for 2-3 years, right? Not a good thing, by the way. So the owners were like, what the fuck's happening to the game? Why are you guys, what's taking so long? And so that pushed the development timeline further forward, caused them to probably lock features a little bit earlier and to release a little bit earlier. And then that's maybe a debate to be, maybe not here, but people can have about like whether that was a good thing or not. But hindsight 2020, you'll be like, oh, that sounds terrible. But actually, if you were there at the time, at the moment, and we were already in a 2-year state of nothing, do you think you could have held out for another 1 year or 2 year? Imagine if Overwatch 2 didn't release in 2022, and in fact it came out in 2023, or perhaps even 2024, of how much of a meltdown. Think about where this podcast was back then, and how much complaining, and how much dooming, and how much depression there was. Imagine then, on top of what that was like, then being like, oh yeah, so the game's actually not coming in 2022, guys. It's now going to be 23 or 24. How fucking terrible would that have been? It would have been the end. It genuinely would have been the fucking end. So actually, the Overwatch League pushing them to release in 2022 was a good thing, actually.
Yeah, I think we always assumed it was just like investors coming knocking and being like, you said you were making a game, where's the game? Like, it's been years at this point. What have you got to show me? Probably not enough for them to be happy, but maybe our Lord and Savior Bobby Kotick, the God Emperor, actually saved us. Who knows?
There was a lot of unhappiness. There was like, hey, where is this freaking game? Because I was with the league at the time, and the people, we were like, guys, like the season starts. We have to scrimmage. Like we had you can remember Gunva, Avril. Gunva literally had a custom workshop code to mimic what we guessed Overwatch 2 would be.
Yeah,
so we could actually scrimmage.
Yeah, no, sorry. I want to cut in here just because I know you guys are all passionate. You're all on the competitive side of the thing, right? So you guys are all on the, Overwatch League was the big thing. I'm going to try, in the interest of being a moderator, I'm going to try and actually offer the other side. And I'm actually going to try and sort of assume Frito's role, which is to play Jeff Kaplan Whisperer a little bit. I don't know if you guys have actually had any, direct chat with Jeff, and not that I was his best chum, but I think going off of like the actual some of the direct conversations I've had with Jeff and reading between the lines a lot of the interview, I think the picture I could paint to any listeners right now is that I think Jeff clearly is a very rigid is perhaps not the right word, but he has a very clear vision of how he thinks things should be. And that obviously that visionary aspect is what made him an amazing developer, right? It made him amazing in WoW. It's what allowed Overwatch to become what it was, because he was like, this is what I want, this is what I want to do. But you could see aspects of that seeping out even in his talk with this dude, where there was a lot of times where he spoke of things with a distance as if he wasn't involved in the process. You know, so he talks at one point about, and you guys have earmarked several of these. At one point, he says, oh, you know, I like small teams. He said that, like, I prefer having a small dev team to the point where we should be basically too overworked. He said the point at which I hire another dev is when we have to work overtime to make something happen. And that, like, sounds incredibly unhealthy. Like, that sounds really bad. But clearly to him, that's the environment he prefers, right? He wants, like, this elite team has to be that way. And then, as AVRL flagged up, there was a point when it was offered to him, like, let's just have 2 separate development teams. And obviously, we right now would be like, that's a no-brainer. Do it. Have a separate team. But clearly, Jeff has, like, this, like, I want the game to be done this way. Like, he has what he believes is right. It's not just about what's efficient or what's effective. It's about, like, what is morally correct about game development. And you can see this in some of his recent media where he's, you know, now he's promoting his new game. He's kind of clearly have a lot of contempt, I think, for modern gaming culture of, like, how fans interact. He was very distant with the community. He was super, I might even go so far as to say condescending to the community sentiment as to, like, what feedback people were giving. He was very, like, you guys don't, like, again, you think you want it, but you don't, is the infamous Blizzard quote. And it's not Jeff's quote, but it embodies that era of like Blizzard development. And he, again, ironically, he says, like, oh, there were a lot of Blizzard developers coming off of WoW who felt like they couldn't make a mistake. Ironically, Jeff was one of those guys. And I think he kind of bulldozed with his idea, basically. He bulldozed with his vision of, like, it has to be done like this. We have to not have the free-to-play. He kind of talks with contempt for the free-to-play model. He talks with contempt of the, like, churn out loot boxes and stuff. So clearly what actually ended up happening, I think, by the end, is that the game market had clearly gone in a way that Jeff just didn't like. And he resisted as long as he could. And I think that's why we sat here with so much frustration now, looking at it as, like, what were you guys doing? Like, what was happening? And clearly he just didn't want to evolve it into that direction. He was looking for any possible desperate way he could hold on to I still want it to be a box model. I still don't want to, like, pump out skins and give you guys. And I think that's why I think he didn't blame everything in Overwatch League. I think the quote was slightly pushed to the nth degree. I think what he was saying was there was too much pressure from that side of the game that kind of ruined what I wanted to do. Again, it's like, I wanted a vision where we're just artists making art, and I want to, like, explore the possibility of making, like, Junkenstein's Revenge and Archives a little bit just to play around. I don't want to have to worry about a replay viewer, and I don't want these, like, exec, you know, billionaire owners, as you guys said, like, pressuring me, like, where's the league? Where's the game, bro? Where's the game? You know, Bobby said, this is the next NFL. Where's the game? So I think he basically resisted as long as he could, and then eventually reached a point where it was clear that the tides had turned, and he was just like, okay, this is not, like, I cannot be the developer.
Yeah. Do you guys know much about George Lucas? You guys know, like, I read a biography on him recently, and it reminds me so much of Jeff Kaplan. It's that bitterness versus the suits. It's my way or the highway a little bit, where he, like, creates these masterpieces when he's got somebody in his side that's going to be like, well, no, George, we need to do this. Like, we need to do this. It feels like with Jeff, it's like, I respect the crap out of him, and I like agree with his sentiments a lot of the time, but it's also like, hey, but we need to do this. Like, if you let Jeff do whatever he wants, you might have some problems, kind of a thing. Like, he needs somebody in his court to kind of divert it. And like what you were saying about with, like, his vision for Overwatch was something that if Overwatch was the way that he wanted it, we wouldn't be here. The game would be dead. It would be gone.
Yeah.
Right. So I respect him, but I disagree with him. It's kind of my viewpoint.
I disagree with all of it. The problem I have with Jeff Kaplan and that whole sentiment is, like, he's basically acting like an indie developer that doesn't realize he's working on a AAA masterpiece live service. And it's like, brother, you can be the small indie guy who just wants to work on your little California game, I'm sure it'll be great. I'm not trying to hate on that. I'm gonna give it a chance. Might not be my type of game. I don't play Rust, but the thing is, like, if that's the kind of game you want to make, and you want to make your story game, and you want to make your little small 20-person team game, do not work on Overwatch. Pass it along earlier. Give it to somebody who's going to take it in the direction that needs to go as a live service game for the sake of the fucking player base, please. And not like treat it like, oh no, it's so successful. No, fuck, I didn't want it to be this successful, guys. It's too successful. No, the game's too big. Like, bro, move on. If the game didn't go where you wanted to go, and now the reality is this: you want the game to be B, but the reality is the game is A. I'm sorry, the game ended up being A. You want it to be B. Give it up, brother. Hand the reins over. Stop pushing the game to something it's not. Stop pushing to some PvE fantasy land where the game is not that. Because we saw what those 3 PvE missions that eventually came out was, and if that's the tone for the PvE direction that Jeff had, dog shit. Sorry. That's the truth.
And
Complete
I
dog
was
shit.
always saying back in the day, it's never going to be better than like Left 4 Dead 2 multiplayer. Like that's a really cool thing. I love this kind of stuff, like maybe Destiny missions. I don't know. I never really had the vision for it. I think Jeff's kind of like this guy who we all wish he was our manager in our workplace. Like everyone listening to this, he probably knew like the name of every single person's partner in the team and 3 interesting things about them. And it morally outraged him the fact that his team could get bigger, like big enough that he couldn't know everyone personally. But I just never thought that was realistic for the type of game that it ended up being, even if it wasn't when he started, right?
Yeah, and I think we've kind of we've kind of gone through this topic well enough. So does anyone else have anything else they want to chime in on the whole Jeff and sort of development? I brought it up because I didn't think it would go quite this well, but I think it was fun. It was fruitful. Because I think that was a big part of like Overwatch in the news cycle. A lot of it was because Jeff was popping up.
Turns out I did have something to complain about, and it was just Kaplan.
Apparently it was just Kaplan, the guy who's no longer.
You just needed to know which buttons. Yeah, well, he showed up again out of the woodwork to talk about it. So welcome back.
See, I told you, Realth. I told you that it starts off positive, and then I mentioned the trigger word, and everybody goes off. It's just like fuck this guy, fuck this guy in particular. Yeah. So I think. The sort of way I'd round it out is I'm also sad that we never did actually get the vision that Jeff wanted. Like we kind of ended up with the spilled milk, which is that we didn't really get a live service Overwatch 1 game. We had to go to 2 and then back. And we never got the PvE thing that Jeff really wanted either. So it's actually kind of the ultimate loss was, I think, the gaming community, because like everybody would have.
I don't think it's a loss.
Well, okay, you may not have wanted that game. You may not have wanted that game. I mean, there was a loss for sure, which is that from 2016 peak Overwatch, if you had just been like, let's just go comp Overwatch, where would it be now? Like, think of like that competitive game had it only ever been a competitive game, and think like had they just released 2016 and then Jeff had gotten to do whatever he wanted to do, what would that game have looked like? What would the actual realized version of that look like? We never got it. We got like this really.
I can tell you what it would look like. Not Overwatch is what it would have looked like. Completely not Overwatch. That's the truth.
Yeah, and that may be fine, and that may be a game you didn't want to play. But what I'm saying is, the world didn't get that game, and it would have been nice to see what that game looked like.
At the cost of Overwatch potentially being completely put in the shitter, wouldn't have been worth it. The amount of time they spent working on it, delaying for another X however many years, we got to see the small tiny tidbit. I don't know how much of a percentage of what their final plan was, but the 3 missions that we did get, whatever representation that is of his grand plan, I don't want to see the rest of the plan just based off that alone. I'm being honest.
Yeah, and how many more years, right? Like, how close were they realistically? If that's what we got output, I don't know. Like, we're thinking like it would have been nice to see this theoretical game that clearly was very very long off, like 3 or 4 years maybe. Yeah, it would have been nice, but I like this video game more.
Yeah, I might be talking to a bias sample here. I think for what it's worth, that those 3 missions were like the absolute worst version. I think that was the fuck. We need to just put something out now. Fuck it. This sucks. But
the worst version.
I think they all knew. I'm pretty sure they've like said, yeah, we knew it sucked. But what could we do?
I thought it was fine. Is the thing. It was fine. It was serviceable, but not good.
Okay, so let's talk
then
about.
That's a problem because you spend many years on that, and you want to spend X however many more years on serviceable, not good. Sorry, that's a waste of time.
Well, let's talk then about the current game then. Let's go back to actually talking about how things are now. So we'll start maybe a bit more general, and then we'll dig into some of the specifics. So I kind of want to talk about just general game feel? You guys have said, the game is in a healthier place, but what is it about the game that we think is healthy? Or maybe, Spilo and Realth in particular were kind of flagging up that there are some problems. So maybe there are some problems that you guys have. But how would you describe the current game feel of Overwatch? I'll go to Realth first. Realth, go ahead.
Nothing has changed. The game is the same game it was 6 months ago, and that is okay. Probably 7 out of 10. Could be a 10 out of 10 if not for many decisions made. Game's a little bit slow, to be honest. Everything happens all at once, and it's all based on ability trade instead of like larger resource trade for the most part. I don't really like that. Aside from that, I don't want to go into anything more specific. That's a general overview of like my opinion. 6v6 currently is in the gutter because they, I think, accidentally put the DPS passive up to the way it is in 5v5Q for some reason. I think it was accidental, quite frankly, when they changed the sub roles. So now it feels very slow because that game really needs the regeneration of resources in order to be able to get you back into the action when a tank starts chipping you from across the map. So yeah, that's more or less where I am.
Interesting. Spilo, I'll take it to you. How do you feel about just the overall current game feel?
Good. I mean, I enjoy playing it a lot. I mean, for me, the negativity is less to do with how much I enjoy the game right now, and more along like the trend of like, oh, I could see that becoming slightly a problem. I think sound design has fallen off a little bit. I think rank reset has been a bit of a train wreck. I think we've had performance issues. I think the optimization has taken a downturn as of recently as well. And then there's just a little bit of polishing that's been needing on the last couple of characters, as well as we're coming off probably the worst balancing quarter in Overwatch 2 in the last 2 years. I think the fall winter of Overwatch this past was like the worst in terms of like win rates, like the worst mismanagement of balance that we've had for a while. And things like that don't just magically randomly happen, certainly not when they're clustered like that. I think any statistician will tell you that, like, if you see that many things happening simultaneously, that's a bit of a red flag. Why is that happening simultaneously, right? And I think a lot of it is what we just saw at Spotlight. Like, that takes a ridiculous amount of developer resources to release one hero, much more so 5. So for me, it's been, as Realth has said, it's like, okay, you got your content drop, you got everybody's attention now. Are we going to actually clean up our mess? You're one of these like Jackson Pollock paintings here, but you've left paint all over the floor. We need to scrub this stuff up before we go crazy again. And I think like there has been we haven't had a hero rework in years, to my knowledge, right? Has it been Farah since like season 9? I think like it's been a long time. Map reworks.
Well,
I know that
got
those
reworked.
Yeah, no comment. But map reworks, I know, are coming up. They've talked about map reworks coming up. I think Antarctica is the one that's coming up the soonest. But that's been also a long time since we've seen map reworks. We haven't seen the optimization addressed. We haven't seen the sound design addressed. We have characters like Vendetta and Freya that still have really problematic both sound and gameplay loop designs that have not been addressed since their release. We've seen a lot of stubbornness with that. And I really don't think I don't want to say the word stubbornness exactly, because that implies it's a conscious choice that those problems are not being addressed. I think that's maybe why I'm so concerned, because I actually really trust the current balance and design team. I don't think they don't agree with me perfectly, obviously, so they are flawed. If they were perfect like me, then it would be great. That's a joke for the one YouTube comments getting mad about that. But the one thing is that I feel like they just don't necessarily have the time. I don't think like something has to give when you release this much content. And I feel like that's been my general problem. Now, that being said, none of them are super major. You can just ban Vendetta, right, Rolf? That's the solution to everything.
Yay.
You can just vote for not Circuit Royale unless you're in Plat, and then you're screwed.
What's the ban rate on
and avoid that map. Right, exactly.
People do not vote for Circuit Royale. Let me just clarify that the one thing I can tell you in my game experience is people do fucking vote Circuit Royale all the time, every time.
It's stupid.
Yeah,
it's
like
really
linear
dumb.
gameplay experiences.
Linear gameplay experiences, exactly. And but I think my major concern with this is the irony. There's some nuance here, but the irony is that people don't always love new things, especially if those new things feel a little bit rough to play into. I think Jetpack's a great example, where ironically, when you over-focus on content, there are certain systems in Overwatch that will, if they're not done well, will actually significantly compromise the not even long-term, but short-term enjoyment of that product. So let me give you an example. Jetpack Cat releases Super Mega Broken State, super silly. They needed to adjust her, and they needed to adjust her quickly. Hasn't kind of has happened a little bit, but just not. She's still, the sound design's goofed up. She's completely dead silent. So what do people do? They ban her. So this new content, nobody's playing because it's banned every single game.
Yeah.
Right? Another example would be something like the rank reset, right? Everyone's excited to log back into Overwatch. We're going to get our rank reset, guys, rank reset. But the match quality is so incredibly bad because of this rank reset that all of the people that are excited to log in because of the rank reset, not all the people, but a lot of the people are going to have like a really negative experience with the game. So I'm all for content, but there's a line that you cross there where it's like, okay, well, now everybody's just banning new content. People are not enjoying the new content. That's obviously not true, but there is a certain percentage of me that is a little bit concerned about that. And those problems escalate, right? Once the shine of like, oh my gosh, that Beckett is so funny, I want to kill her, right? That lasts a couple of weeks, and then it's like, okay, we got to clean this stuff up because it's the novelty is going to wear off.
About 5
You know what it is?
minutes
Okay, here's a terrible analogy. That one quirky friend that you had in high school that was hilarious the first time you met them, and then 3 weeks later, like, dude, shut up, like, please, like, it's not funny anymore. The gimmick isn't funny anymore, and I think that's like the content, that thing that you have to make it quality. That's my 12-hour diatribe on that topic.
Thank you. I'm gonna let AVRL go first before we kind of dive into some of those, because those are some great things to go right into. But first, AVRL, you were, again, you said nothing to complain about. There's a few for you.
I mean, there is quick play. People can play their cat there if they really want to. But
And I'm sure they're really enjoying having to play against her.
maybe my biggest thing right now is I'm not a fan of Vendetta in terms of gameplay design. I think the rest of the cast is fine. I think balancing wise, I think they've been a bit slow on addressing Vendetta. I think I'm just very against. First of all, I think strongly melee based heroes in an FPS game is already a bit of a mistake. But then, especially as a DPS, is a big mistake. I think as a tank and a support is one thing, but as a DPS, you're walking into a bit of a trap there. So Vendetta's entire design, from like a gameplay perspective, I think is a bit of a.
What can you elaborate? What is it that you don't? What is it that you don't?
So the problem is when you think about what a DPS is in a role, in the damage role, is you need to deal damage. You need to be in a position to get kills and deal damage, or you're useless, right? You think about any DPS in the game. If you are not the one putting out the most damage and securing the kills and being the backbone of the team in that sort of role, you're not doing much of the team at all. You're not the guy that's adding a bunch of value. You're not the guy that's like able to like take and hold space and provide support to your team like a tank can. You're not healing your team. You're not doing any of that kind of stuff on a support. You're the damage person who needs to go in and get kills and deal damage. So if you are that, but on a melee character, think about what the melee character needs to be able to achieve and able to fulfill the role of a DPS. And then you start to realize how overtuned a melee DPS needs to be in order to fulfill the role of a DPS. It's different when you're on tank or a support because like, oh yeah, okay, Brig doesn't like, yeah, I guess you need to like hit some hits and you need to be in a position to like get your Inspire. But largely, your gameplay isn't completely broken if you're not just like knee deep in the melee DPS and getting that shit done. Ryan can still provide support just by having a shield, just by walking with his shield up. You're like helping your team just by default and fire striking every now and then. Vendetta just doesn't do anything unless you're knee deep in the shit, swinging and getting kills and dealing damage. And you have this like super binary gameplay of I'm in there and I'm melee and I'm just dead. I'm just getting squished because guess what? Range versus melee, range naturally has an advantage because of the range factor. So to overcome that, she needs to be really, really strong. And then on top of that, you think about what she needs to achieve in the role to deal damage. She needs to be really, really strong. Otherwise, her character doesn't make any sense gameplay-wise. So that's my problem with melee DPS. I think you walk into a complete balance trap where, like, I don't know if this is even possible to have Vendetta as a hero that is, like, in a good balanced state. To me, this is one of those binary characters that's going to be either insanely good or just terrible, just based on the fact that you're a melee DPS. So I think melee DPS, giant trap, and I don't like that at all. But in terms of the rest of the gameplay, honestly, I don't have a lot of complaints. Like, they got past that difficult stuff, which is doing the gameplay overhauls, the new sub roles, and getting all the new heroes and getting all the content. I think the content part is the hard part, and now the tweaking, fixing the sound stuff, fixing bugs and whatever. That's like way smaller stuff that they are just going to have to grind through and get done, compared to the way more difficult stuff, which is getting the content on in the first place.
Perfect. I think we've got some really great, basically our next few topics are already kind of lined up here. So let's go back now, because I love that you've kind of gone on that vendetta, because I think you're not the only person from what I gather who's not happy with vendetta. But then also, I think what Spilo mentioned about the cat is also kind of, I think, relevant to this discussion, which is like, A, new content, but B, this frustrating experience that players often they kind of opt out of. I think the bans are actually phenomenal. I think like the fact that this exists to do this is actually great. And, I see Vendetta and Jetpack Cat are probably the two most banned heroes that I've seen in my game so far. So maybe we can talk, and I mean, from my perspective, everything is new. Vendetta is new, bans are new, map voting is new. As a player who's come back after a long time, and I think it'll be a good perspective to add when we get into the nitty gritty. So let's talk about the relatively new shit. It may not be specifically new to this season to you guys, but let's talk about this big picture new additions, and let's go to the new heroes and stuff. So I'll take it to Spilo. So you kind of have. It sounded like you had a bigger beef than just Jetpack Cat, right? It sounded like you had some kind of this is an alarming trend. I don't like what's happening here. So you want to elaborate and set the scene of what is it that Jetpack Cat represents that you're not happy with?
It's just jobs not quite finished. And I've been the first one to say that I think a lot of the new heroes have been pretty good. Not everyone's going to I think the one thing I will paraphrase is I think the hero design team does an amazing job. And I think that there's been a little bit of a speed. It feels like they've been a little rushed. I think they're an excellent, competent team. And I know I'm going to get more Blizzard chill comments for that one, but I really do think they've done a great job. I think a lot of the heroes have been a lot of fun. So all those disclaimers aside, I think there's just been a little bit of a lack of polish on many of the newer characters. I think Jetpack Cat was sound design. And then I think just some of the design decisions, the balance decisions needed to have been infinitely carrying somebody. The flight resource, this is something that was flagged really early and just never really made it. They went live with way too much flight resource, and I think that's just kind of inexcusable. I think Onron is another one where I think the vision for her character was just kind of flawed. And people are immediately. I mean, this stuff has been also given and this was feedback I gave during playtests, basically. All right. So, and it wasn't just me either. This is not all about me, but a lot of people kind of said similar things, and yet Onrun still kind of went live clunky, and she still is clunky. And by clunky, I mean, I had a whole video on it, but there are delays between many of her abilities that should not be there. You can die out of your ult. Before the resurrection ult, you can't chain your dashes together. There's a delay iframe, but going into your iframe dodge, she moves too slow. There's just so many things that should work with Onrun, but that don't. There's things like, why does Emre have self damage on nade? Is it good to have a double nade gameplay loop? Realth, you've talked about this, right? Is it good to have two charges of nade? You just throw both nades, and is that a good gameplay loop for the character? Is Dominus shield healthy? Right? These are not necessarily balanced critiques, because I actually think balance has been okay with the new characters. I think they've done a really good job of kind of keeping them at a good competitive level. We've not had any tanks besides Domina in the first couple of days completely massacring the win rates. And I also don't think that they're failed designs. They're all fun to play. I've enjoyed playing them a lot. They're just not great. They have think about Onron and Mizuki are great examples of characters that I really like playing, and I would love to play. I think these guys have the potential to be up there with Lucy or Genji. Not quite that good, but they have the potential to be amazing, super fun. You grind them forever, one trick them for life, super high skill ceiling, but they're just not quite there. Just not quite there. And I think it's more from a place of I see potential and I see amazing talent and skill from the design team, but they're not finished products, is the best criticism that I would say. And I don't just say that from my opinions on balanced design, but even just more objective things like how they look, how they sound, how the character's been executed in reality, right? And I think even little bugs went live. And I don't like that trend as much. I have a higher standard for Blizzard games.
Somebody listening, there was a fantastic meme there of Spilo saying, just bugs. I can see it right now. Somebody's like, me when I go camping, just bugs. But I think maybe what we're seeing, people have asked for a long time for a faster release cycle, right? And maybe what we're seeing is the quote unquote Blizzard polish is not quite there when we dump 5 heroes. And maybe that's I want to take
it to balance there, right? Sorry, really quick. Flats would say 4 heroes or 5 heroes or something like this. They said something like, what is it, a hero a season or something like that as a goal? I mean, that is a massive increase. What is that, double? At least a double increase in hero releases. And that's not even including this year, where this year's going to be, I think, 10, right? So it's going to be like, it goes from like what, 3 to 10 or 4 to 10.
Yeah, three.
I
Three
mean,
of
that's a
them, right?
monstrous increase, monstrous increase. So it's begun incredible that these heroes are even decent, much less actually solid designs. Like, it's actually really impressive. So it's more, for me, it's my criticisms of the cadence. It's not the competence.
Sure, it's like, it's again, this is like the pressure to output more heroes is causing them to kind of cut corners, and that
Yes.
infringes upon your enjoyment. I'll take it to Realth, because I could sense, again, you kind of maybe have a
Okay.
lot you want to say on this, so feel free. I know you're new to the call, so you maybe are trying to be polite or sort of deferent, but feel free to just go in and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt the big dogs while they're
No,
talking.
there's no big dogs.
Okay,
These guys
so
fucking idiots, so just go ahead and just chime in
Jetpack
when you
Cat
feel like
is
it.
the worst thing that's happened to this video game in a very long period of time. Okay, you can ban it, it's taken up a ban slot, but you can't say that for everything. And when you lower the bar for what can exist just because it can get banned, you end up with everything generally getting a little bit. It's okay if it's a little bit worse over time, right? There's a load of things in the game right now that are just on the cusp of people rioting over it and that just aren't addressed in any way. Just because, well, it's your fault, you didn't ban it. It doesn't have to be in the game, right? So it's fine. Your frustration's been reduced, so the average quality of the gameplay can go down a little bit, because in any particular lobby, at least one of the many things that you could ban are going to be in the game, right? So that's just the general, like, rising of the tide with the hero bans that just happens. For Jetpack Cat, it's pretty obvious that putting something so disruptive to the average gameplay loop of the game at the skill floor is a terrible idea. There is no requirement whatsoever. There is no, even putting a timer on it doesn't require anything of you. It's literally just press button, pull something, Mauga cage to the other side of the map. Okay, right. It might be fun for you. I don't find it fun for me, and I don't find it fun to play against. And now people in quick play have to deal with that. Anran, I'm going to call this a 5v5 diff. Anran's a lot better in 6v6, where AoE and utility in general matter a lot more. When you have to make everything duelist focused and make everything be able to win a 1v1 or flip a 1v1, I think these characters that are more AoE-ish or could do more tank hate, because the 6v6 format's a lot more resilient to tank hate in general, they get a lot worse. Emre, I've said multiple times, the nade cooldown on Emre is just buggered. I mean, it is 10-second cooldown on each grenade and 20-second cooldown in total, and it's a nested grenade. So what is the gameplay loop? Okay, we're in a duel, we're going to throw both grenades, we're going to kill someone, then we're going to AFK for 20 seconds. Right, sure, we buffed the gun so that Emre's good, right? Emre's good in the video game, and winning a duel by default, be throwing 2 grenades is good in a video game. But like, it would be better if it was 6 or 5 seconds. The grenades were reduced. There's a lot of stuff you can do there that makes it actually applicable. AVRL, you want to talk?
Keep
You
going.
good? Okay. So I thought
He's like, no, this guy's spitting. Let him go.
So
No, I'm just stretching. I'm good.
okay, cool. Vendetta, like AVRL, you're saying, it's a melee-based character difference. I think it's a 5v5 difference, personally, to me. The problem with Vendetta is the way that Vendetta interacts with bursty tank resources. That's just it. Vendetta gets a bubble, especially with, thank you, Custer, 25% extra movement speed. They're just going to blow up the entire enemy team. That's just how it's going to work. If you put it in 6v6 and you have a Winston that should be taking the bubble, going to disrupt an area that has been glued together by more resources, because you have to do that in 6v6, then the Vendetta can't get the bubble quite as often, becomes a lot less annoying, and quite frankly, the thing that should be marking Vendetta in the first place is the off tank. That's basically the job. You play Vendetta a couple of rounds in 6v6, you do not get to walk over the enemy team. You actually just get marked everywhere you go, and you actually struggle to get in with full health. And it's just a difference in the game modes, to be quite honest, in my opinion. Mizuki is, in my opinion, a lot better in 6v6 just because of their AoE kind of like glue they can provide. But again, they're just another character that has to become a duelist because the 5v5 format demands every character be able to fight angles themselves.
Which is
So
great.
that is basically everything. Yeah. So yeah, it's great. Everyone wants to be a duelist. Everyone wants to be an aimer. I am a 30-year-old man. I do not want to be an aimer. And quite frankly, I don't play the game enough to keep my aim up, because realistically, I'm going to have to hop into the game every single day in order to be able to keep my aim at a reasonable level. So if I end up in a situation where I can't play for 3 days, I'm going to hop on the game and not be able to do anything. That's fun. Well, do I have characters that I can play where I don't have to aim? Oh wait, Juno now has to headshot. Winston now has to right click. It's just a slow creep of things that have to have me interact with this aiming system when realistically I don't want to be dueling. I don't want to be aiming if I don't have to. I want to be an old man that plays with my toys with my brain, right? That's what I want. I'm gonna.
He's
Let me
after my heart here. After 2 years of not playing FPS games, and I'm just like whiffing everything I could possibly whiff. Go ahead, AVRL.
let me respond to that. No, I think the Vendetta situation for me is exactly what you described Jetpack Cat to be. Which, by the way, I agree. I think the Jetpack Cat design is probably fundamentally like not great from a gameplay perspective for the game. That's my argument for Vendetta. It's not a 5v5 or 6v6 discussion because it would be like me saying it was like, oh, but it doesn't matter because Jetpack Cat in 2v2 is fine. It's like no. It's not about how many people are on the map. It's the fundamental gameplay design of the character I find problematic.
Sure.
And like for that point, the Jetpack Cat design probably not great for the game either. I would have a lot of problem. The only reason I'm not talking about Cat as much is because, at least to me, she's not like taking over the game. The
she's
way
banned.
Vendetta is. Even if she wasn't banned, I don't think she'd be taking over the game. So,
Sure.
just from a gameplay perspective, like what you can achieve on this hero versus like you look at Vendetta's win rate, like what you can do on Vendetta, it's silly.
Okay.
But here's the thing though, at least Cat is like from a artistic design perspective, really good for the game because that's the kind of thing that grabbed a lot of attention. Like out of the 5 new heroes, she was by far the number one, and it wasn't close.
Yeah.
The number one in terms of grabbing attention for the average player to be like, holy shit, they put a cat in the game, and then they came back to the game. Maybe because of that alone, perhaps.
Yeah.
So like from an artistic perspective, perfect for the game. Gameplay, not ideal.
But
Yeah,
Avril,
I
do
mean-
you agree that if we have Vendetta and Zarya in the same room at the same time, the hero becomes fundamentally just unbalanceable? Right? It's either incredibly good with Zarya or really bad.
Are we
without
talking
her,
Vendetta?
just 'cause of the
Are we
way the
talking about
resources
Vendetta?
work.
Even without
no, I
Zarya,
think-
she's pretty nasty. She's like it's
Okay.
the
Yeah, so
it's
we
the
reduced that by 10%.
gameplay itself. It's the gameplay
it's still
itself
there.
it's like I explained that like the fact that you have a melee DPS requires you to design the melee DPS in a certain way to make this hero even relevant. Because in order to fulfill the role, I won't explain the whole thing again because everyone's heard it. But in order
Yeah.
to fulfill the DPS role, she has to be able to achieve certain things. Which, when you're melee, means you have to be crazy as a hero to do those things. Which is why she can do so much and deal so much damage and get 2 overheads back to back and just blow somebody up and blow tanks up and do everything. And then yes, if you get a bubble on top of that, you're even crazier.
Before you guys continue on the Vendetta thing, I'm just gonna say I'm giving you a 5-minute time limit on the Vendetta side piece. So go nuts in that time. Spilo, you can chime in because these two have already had a little bit of
All right.
say. Go ahead.
I popped the squat on this one. I'm standing on my chair right now. Okay, listen. The thing with Vendetta, okay, so if you want a melee design character to function, you need either one of two things. You need either burst, because as Avril's talked about, like proximity is risk, right? So you need to do the burst, so you don't stay there for very long, aka Magic from Marvel Rivals, who by the way I love to play. Or the second one is sustain. The problem is that Vendetta has sustain not through movement and motion, like Tracer, like Genji, like Wrecking Ball, even to another extent, like Tank Doomfist. She has sustain through just raw HP and in and out cycles. Now, the funny thing is that I initially, when playtesting her, I gave feedback. She's just too slow. This character is too slow. She's too beefy. There's too much overhead value. Sword toss is ridiculous as a defensive cooldown. It's like it's literally like old school Reaper teleport. Like you can't get out with sword toss. It's way too slow, and that none of that has changed. So I really think that Vendetta could work as a faster combo oriented character. I know people get tired of me saying that because they say the same thing about Onron, but it's true. It's true. You can't have a character that wants to get in your face, aka Onron and aka Vendetta, and not have that character be relatively fluid and be relatively fast. Because if they aren't relatively fluid or relatively fast, the only way that they can actually win is just by being ridiculously overtuned. So the problem with Vendetta is not necessarily like block or whatever else. It's the fact that she's so slow that you are either all or nothing. That's it. You either get the kill or you don't. And that's always been the fundamental problem with Vendetta is it's like she dies literally more than any other character in Overwatch. It's not even close. But she always gets her one. She always forces insane resources. And in the rare circumstance where she doesn't die, it sometimes feels like she's absolutely unkillable. So I think Vendetta is like the turning point for me with hero design. because like Freya has her own issues, but at least she's fluid. Vendetta they never really figured her out. Like they never really made her flow the way that a melee DPS, like even Magic and Rivals, should flow. And so it's impossible. You can number tweak her till the cows come home. And they've tweaked all the wrong numbers, by the way. They've taken away. Finally nerfed it with overhead recently, but they just
30
nerfed
seconds,
everything
Spilo.
but
30
her overhead.
seconds.
Okay. Last thing. But if you want a melee DPS character to work, the sustain has to come through skill play and motion. It could be a parry mechanic, it could be movement, it could be fluidity, and they've done none of that. So she's just a brawling, hulking DPS that smashes you over the head in your face, which not only makes her skill ceiling really low, but also makes her skill flow really accessible. She's accessible for anybody that just wants to swing on front line and get away with it. It sucks. There's potential, I think. That's the one thing.
Okay, so we've got 3 different takes here. AVRL says just fundamentally melee DPS broken. Spilo says it's that she's too slow and clunky. Like if she was faster and more combo in and out, it might be acceptable, but this iteration is not. Realth says it's mostly a format issue of like in 5v5 it's giga busted. So Realth, go ahead, carry on. Where do we lead from here?
So Spilo, you're saying it's like which one would you go? Like bursty combo? So you said like dodge tank.
Not bursty combo.
Right?
That's DPS Doomfist.
Yeah, DPS Doomfist, right? So you either go like the more sustainy route where the character's got the movement abilities to be able to dodge around, kind of like how we got with Anran with the E that moves slightly. That kind of stuff. Is that what you're thinking? That level, that type.
Better, but
Not
yeah, that
but
kind of.
Yeah.
I disagree with you. Yeah, because you don't have to do DPS to be a DPS. You just have to be able to hold the tables. You could be like a mini tank on a DPS. Full attention.
Yeah, I think the problem is just this, like melee-based designs always lend themselves closer to tanking than they do DPS because they demand such a disproportionate amount of cooldowns and resources from the enemy team when they're close, and they will always eat that because of proximity. So they will always take these resources better, like DM or Zarya bubble. Oh, by the way, my team for the tournament, it is votes, which is Vendetta Goats. So what we do is we bubble the Vendetta, who is me. We diva DM the Vendetta, who's me. We put a nade on the person. We nano me. We speed boost, and we put break packs on me. And we attempt to kill the enemy team or die immediately. And that is possibly the most fun I've ever had in the game. But yeah, it's the way this character interacts. And even in 6v6, with all of that on me, and yes, it's me feeding 3/4 of the time, but I blow up very consistently just because all of that is just eating through a bubble and then sleeping me just instant kills, right? Somebody can mark me before I get in and take my health bar away, and that takes some of the resources, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can do in terms of angle control that is like, I don't know, it's just a lot harder to do this angle control without the tank, whose job is to trade resources for space at a certain point. Like that is the tank's role. And if you don't have that, you end up in a 1-to-1 duel where the melee character is always going to win if you get on someone, and they're always going to win more if you get on someone with resources. And I think that's just unstoppable, right? Vendetta should be able to run over a Cassidy on an angle if they get a Zarya bubble. That's how the character should be designed. But yeah, it lends itself more to tanking. I said from the moment of release, these type of characters are a lot easier to make in the tank role. I just think that they probably can't exist in the DPS role in 5v5 specifically.
Okay, interesting. AVRL,
Or just at
anything
all.
else?
Should have just been a tank to start with, or just shouldn't have been in the game because we're just talking about like this feast or famine gameplay where like either you said it, you go in, you blow them up, or they blow you up, and this is the problem with melee based heroes, but particularly on the DPS role, because you as a DPS you offer nothing else to the team except your ability to blow someone up and get your kill. And Spilo said this as well. You know, maybe you do get blown up and Vendetta dies a lot, but you're going to get your one because you deal a ton of damage as well. And you have to because you're a DPS, because if you don't deal that damage and you just get blown up, then you're just a terrible hero. That's just an awful hero that doesn't get played and can't be played ever. So yeah, the proximity issue based on you being a DPS causes this feast or famine gameplay. And even if you decrease her HP or you made her faster, you do all this other stuff, I think the feast or famine gameplay is still just going to exist because, in my opinion, she just kind of lacks the neutral game that a shooting character has. If you're melee by nature, you have this kind of all-in nature to you. You kind of have to all in. What else are you going to do? You're not going to sit there staring menacingly with your sword doing nothing. You got a very mediocre fire strike. You have to just all in. Your entire gameplay is all in, and you're going to blow somebody up or you're going to get blown up. Maybe you'll do both, and that's the full gameplay. And I just think that's a terrible design. It's not, and SVB. It's not even like, oh no, she's broken. It's not about being broken. It's about putting yourself as Blizzard into a design trap where you've created a hero that is like permanently feast or famine by the nature of both the design and also the role that you exist in. I think DPS is a terrible role for Vendetta to exist in. And that's the design trap. It's just a terrible place to be for the hero to even exist.
What's interesting because they learned this lesson and were applauded for it by giving Winston a right click, weren't they? Like I remember the discussions around when Winston got a right click. Everyone was like, "Well, it's really good. Actually, they gave him something else. Otherwise, he would just stand there doing nothing." And I guess
he's a tank.
But
But at least he's a
okay,
tank.
it's okay.
yeah, I know. And at least he's a tank, so the rest of the thing is not problematic. But what I'm saying is, they learned that like basically a guy doing one thing was people didn't like that. People were like, "This feels dumb that I'm just like doing one thing." And
Like,
Nah.
go ahead.
let me compare Vendetta to Genji. Like Genji has way more to do because you're shooting shurikens. You can do way more. Like there's like more of a neutral gameplay there. Imagine if Genji was only Dragon Blade and maybe not as strong because it's the ultimate now, so normal gameplay. Imagine if Genji was only Dragon Blade, what kind of hero he would be.
And his dash had a wind up.
It would just be terrible. It would just be like the most fucked up thing. Where like either this guy goes in Dragon Blades and blows somebody up, or he gets blown up, or both. And that's literally what Vendetta is. And that's the problem.
Yeah, but if Genji was like that in a format where he could be marked on an angle and his neutral was about walking to a place and existing in this place and projecting pressure over what he could theoretically do,
You're
as he was
describing a
pressing
tank.
buttons. Yeah, no, 100%. I'm describing a tank. But like I don't know. I'm a design space guy. I like things to be as pushed to the limits as possible within what we can do in the video game. Like if I can make a melee DPS, I think a melee DPS is a valid thing that should be able to exist in the game. If you can fix all of these horrible problems,
If I can make a cat that drags you off the map, then I guess I can make a cat that drags you off the map. Terrible argument.
I don't know if that's design space or just completely steamrollering the entire video game at a certain point. But you know, yeah,
You have to be careful that we're not overly critical of trying new things, though, right? Because that's
Mm.
also something that we want to praise. I think it really comes down to like when I look at Vendetta, it's like even if the melee DPS is like inherently problematic, what would be the best version of that? You know?
The best version will be a tank.
The best
That's
version of
very
that would be in a format where it could exist in a healthy way. There you go.
Okay, well, we're gonna call that an agree to disagree because like I said, everyone, and I think this is inevitable. Everyone has their lens in which they view the game, right? I have a certain lens that I view the game, so I'm like, when I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. You know, AVRL has a certain lens. Realth has a certain lens of like, I think this would be better in 6v6 or whatever, and the game.
No, I
should
know
be
it is. I've experienced it.
Yeah, well, that's your opinion, and you
It'd be
know,
like if I said, well, if the cat was in 12v12, then the cat would be good, guys. The cat would be fixed. It's just a format question. Guys, if the cat was in 30v30, she'd be fixed. It's just format, guys. Nothing wrong with the hero. Just format, by the way.
well, again, everyone has their
Justin
perspective.
200 versus 200.
Everyone's like,
the cat would be fixed.
everyone's working towards a certain version that they think it should be. So on that note, let's bring it back to the wider discussion. I was gonna say that, you know, from my perspective, to kind of summarize, I sort of intend to make a more full length video, just discussing my thoughts on my return and how I felt. My big overall conclusion is that most of things feel the same. Like Overwatch now doesn't feel very different from what I left 2 years ago, at least in terms of gameplay. Like there's new heroes, cool. The sort of meta changes that they made are probably more interesting. By meta, I don't mean balanced meta. I mean like perks, bans, map voting are probably the things that actually are more noticeable than any specific gameplay change they've made for me personally. Where, yeah, it just feels like, yeah, we're doing the same thing. And I guess I dare step on the grenade of the format discussion. I actually think that the 5v5, 6v6, they just feel like two separate games. I did actually tweet about this, and as I should have expected, brain cells were lost. But I think they're basically two separate games. Like, I think 5v5 has its problems, and it's like, it's you know, it's team deathmatchy, and I think we mentioned it earlier as like linear experiences. I think what I've realized on my return is that players love opting into the linear experience, and we'll kind of use this to segue into some of these systems of like maps and bans and stuff. Because what I've noticed is that people vote relentlessly for the like choky maps. Basically, they love anything that's super just like we run to the choke and we fight each other. And this is like doubly true I found in 6v6. In 5v5, they still do this. I think the 6v6 experience is we want to play the OG Overwatch 1 maps where we get trapped in a choke for 4 minutes. That seems to be the format people like voting for. So they love voting for Kings Road, they love voting for Eichenwald, they love voting for Hollywood, that first choke. And people love it. And I think it's actually one of the things I've seen around this discussion is that people want to try and strawman either side, right? It's like if you say, here's 6v6's flaw, people will be like, well, see, that's 6v6 choke, slop, spam, bullshit. And then if you say, well, people in 5v5, they just want to like, deathmatch all over the place. People are like, see, that's the bullshit 5v5 deathmatch slop that everyone wants. When in reality, I think it's actually fine to say that people are opting into the experience they want to opt into. And that's actually what I like about bans and perks and map voting, is that at least it seems that the devs are trying to lean into, okay, well, this is what these guys are saying they want from us. Can we give them what they want? And I think that it's fine to say 6v6 players actually seem to really like, by judging by their voting, they love voting for the choke fights. They like it. It's not disingenuous to just be like, yeah, I think they like that. So let's bring it to the additions of bans, perks, map voting. Let's start with bans, because I feel like that one is maybe one that people have opinions on, and whether I don't actually know your guys' opinions and stance on how bans manifest in this game. So let's start there. Hero bans, good, bad, the way they've implemented good, bad. I'll go to Realth first. Realth.
Yeah, so me and Spilo had a lovely conversation this summer where I have steel man the position that hero bans are actually bad, actually. Which
and
I
to be fair, you have been proven a little bit right with Vendetta.
Did I make any headway in that? Like, I don't know what happened with the conclusion. I make a little bit of headway.
Do you want to summarize? Do you want to summarize for us who weren't there? Like, what was the discussion? What was said? What was?
Yeah, essentially, there's a load of problems with hero bans, from like gameplay stuff, like, okay, well, I can just ban my counter, which is pretty obvious, to community stuff, which is if somebody gets banned repeatedly, what impact does that have on the community for that audience, and exactly how much can you decimate the Sombra player base, and how many content creators for Sombra have to leave before something happens, if you get what I mean. Like, bans are quite disruptive to what is the most dedicated audience to the game in general. And I think, because if you look at quite a lot of characters like Jetpack Cat, where's the Jetpack Cat main subreddit, I know it exists, but realistically, it's not that big, and it's not that big because you can't play the character. So bans, obviously, there's a lot of discussion as to whether Rivals is better or Overwatch is better. Rivals has a system where it's a percentage chance of banning that particular hero. Overwatch has a system where it is randomized between the different votes. Most voted, the opposite of what I said. And I think Overwatch, for all its strengths, might lead a little bit towards snowballing on something that is already meta, because if you don't vote for the meta thing, you can't ban something else, because you don't even have a chance, right? You go into a match right now and try to ban Torbjorn, it's not happening, realistically, unless you're in a very low level on console. So aside from those, there's the developer incentive problem, right? We lower or we raise the level at which players are happy to experience bad things, basically, with it, right? It's fine. You've raised the level. You've given yourself more leeway in terms of design to make more interesting things, more wide out things, things that are crazy. Jetpack Cat is in the game now, right? That couldn't exist without bans, 100%. But at the same time, all of these things that simmer under the surface at kind of like a 4, they slowly raise to a 6 and nobody complains. Slowly gets to a 7, nobody complains, and then you have an entire game with bad experiences where you're really just choosing the bad experience you want over time. And now you can say, well, the developers don't have to do this. They can just mark these at the pass, right? Just knock them on the head. But when we're talking about Sombra, I mean, is that realistic? We have to put development resources into the new heroes or Sombra, and, well, we may as well just leave her. Right, there's no real incentive to do that anymore. Roadhog's another one. Lifeweaver, man, we fixed Lifeweaver's grit, but we gave it to a different character, I guess.
So can I ask
one of those?
Sorry, just to try and let's try and make this a bit more engaging, and let's get the debate part of the title carried on. How is that different before and after bans? Has Sombra not been a problem since literally release? Like the problem of what is Sombra?
Yeah, that's the counter, the Duma argument. Blizzard's never going to fix anything.
No, it's not about never fix. It's just about like how is it meaningfully different like how has bans changed the fact that this is like the 4th version of Sombra, and this is not counting bans. So
well, they don't have a community anymore and nobody plays the character. That's a meaningful difference. But aside from that, I guess the answer is they have no incentive to ever try and do this in a meaningful time frame. Yeah, sure, maybe they don't have an idea right now of how to change it, but there's no incentive anymore.
But they've had, if by that argument, they've had that incentive for years and never done it. So like, I'm not sure that the bans, like I want you to sell to me that the bans are what have changed this equation. When to my perception, it's like, well, we had this exact conversation, didn't we? Like I remember the 2 Sombra creators, we know who they are, Questar and Fitzy. They were both like, yeah, this shit's like when they made I think the virus was that one when they were like, you guys don't give a shit, when they hadn't released that yet. They were like, well, you guys don't give a shit about us. You don't change it. My hero's garbage. I can't make content. I'm not sure where the ban has shifted
there's no straight line to any particular change. That's the thing. Like it's a shifting in developer incentives on what they need to do, right? Like we have Vendetta right now. Would Vendetta have been fixed faster if bans weren't in the game? Well, nobody knows, right? Like you can't say anything. There's no direct line to anything. If we had bans back in Goat's meta, would we still have Brig shield bashing through shield? Well, nobody can tell, right? All you can say is that developer incentives have shifted, and though the developers are more capable and better and more communicative than they ever have been in the history of Overwatch, we have quite a few things that are lagging behind in terms of the speed at which they're addressed.
Okay, I think I understand the argument you're making, but I also think like what's the alternative to that is that because they're not, you know, I'm sure we all agree that they're not lazy on purpose. Like if they're cutting a corner on, let's say, addressing a problem like Sombra, it's not because they're like, this gives me half an hour to smoke a blunt in my lunchtime, right? They're doing it because they'd rather spend that half an hour doing something else. So
yeah, it's an allocation of
what
resources.
What is the alternative? Is
new content.
Yeah, so the alternative is that they like we don't have a ban and they just leave a shitty character in the game to be bad in the game, or as in bad as in like frustrating, as you're like, this is a busted character, or there's no ban and the character doesn't get played either way because it's so like actually bad in terms of power level.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We have a question. Do we want a game in which everything's simmering a little bit higher in terms of frustration and bad interactions? Or do we want a game, and on top of that, do we want a game where there's like 6 or 7 different things that are problematic and you kind of want to ban them, but you kind of can't because you've only got 4 slots, and Domina, Jetpack Cat, and something else have been banned, and Vendetta has been banned. That's the 3 that have been pretty consistent. And I only really have 1 ban slot, but I kind of hate Farah and I can't really ban that anymore, right? There's a continuous creep, and it's happened with Rivals where, in my opinion, Rivals has just not solved its problems on purpose because bans exist over the year that it's been out, year and a half. To the point where now we get an extra ban in Rivals, yay, and now they're banning 6 supports because they haven't addressed any of the problems with the supports over the years. Obviously, they're doing it now with the ultimate charge nerf. But this is kind of like the developer incentives that get introduced when you put something that reduces the frustration players find in the game. It just slows down what you need to do.
Okay, so you're saying kind of like a mountain of community voice would compel them into action faster, whereas now they can kind of, you know, not necessarily draw the right conclusion. If they see a hero getting banned, they're like, oh, whatever, it's just because it's new hero, so we don't need to rush changing it. And then
I will say this to Realth's credit, I kind of was frustrated about their dev thing on. I think there's nuance here, like not to hijack this, but super fast. But like, I do agree that the community perception isn't always accurate. Like, I think the Sombra being banned 95% of games is just stupid, right? Like, I don't like Sombra either, but that's just stupid. That's just like a snowball mindset. But then they did this whole like interview where they're like, oh, well, everyone's banning Domina, but actually Domina's not that good, guys. And I'm like, well, people don't like playing versus the shield, bro. That has nothing to do with the balance, right? So there is a little bit of that, like, bans are like, the community will just ban her if they don't like it. We don't need. I'm like, there should be. Hopefully, it's not enabling a lack of urgency. And as you said, SCB, I hope that we're not learning the wrong lessons from this, because if something is getting banned at 95% of the time, people hate new things, yeah, but also maybe those things just aren't really well done. Like, maybe we should not like let bans enable things. You know, that's kind of I agree with Realth with that a little bit. I like bans too, but yeah.
So I think maybe relevant that we have the system designer of bans in chat. So Gavin Winter, you guys maybe do and should know him. He says, as the systems designer in hero bans, our primary goal was to give players a sense of strategic agency. We really wanted players to have the greater degree of choice. And I think he was replying to some other comment as well. And he just said, I can see the argument about bans removing. The reply was, don't bans remove player choices by their nature? And Gavin replied, I can see the argument. I'm sorry, Gavin, you probably didn't need every word of yours scrutinized, but it's relevant to discussion. You're part of the podcast now too. You're also yapping.
Welcome,
I can see
Gavin.
the argument, but it's giving control over the metagame of each match, letting you decide what's optimal in a given match. And you know, I'm a big ban advocate, so I'm probably partial to Gavin's take. I do want to bring back to one thing you mentioned as well, Realth, which is the way it's done, which is that it's actually interesting because with map votes, it's the other way. It's actually random, but with hero bans, it's an overwhelming choice. So like, do you want to maybe talk about that? Like, you kind of don't like the number aspect of it. It kind of creates a snowball, you said.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And like when we talk about hero bans, I'm not saying like this is ruining the game or causing like massive issues, but it does create incentives for players to ban what's already banned, and it does, in my opinion, theoretically at least, there's no numbers behind this, speed up the rate at which community forms opinions on heroes and sticks to those opinions after the fact. Obviously, it gives you it stops Joe Random banning just like this random hero that you never wanted, and that frustration that comes from that, right? Like you don't want them banning something that's just completely not relevant to the video game, but at the same time, it does create a couple of incentives, right?
Yeah, I think the way I would summarize it, and again, feel free to challenge me again. You know, you may be feeling too polite, or anyone. AVRL, I'm going to take it to you in a second as well. You know, you look like you're ready to transcend to the next level. I think with any system, and I'm sure you guys will agree on this, any system has a set of criticisms you could make. Like this, we added this system, and now these problems arose. And I think you always have to look at like the loss and gain. I think people in general try to fixate on what is lost by adding a thing rather than what is gained, and what like where the net actually comes through. So for me, I'm always like, I hear you. These are actually legitimate complaints, but it's like, what's the alternative? Is like a world where we are forced to play. Yeah, again, if you cited like, you know, 6v6 Brig, we're forced to play. Everybody's playing Hazard or everybody's playing Maoga. You know, like that world to me is like orders of magnitude worse than a world where like Jetpack Cat is like needs balancing, but they won't do it because, you know, she's getting banned, and they'll defer that 2 months down the line.
Yeah,
So,
I think the thing is that the development team have verbally in their patch notes been designing into bans, into making heroes better because they know they're going to be banned on the maps where they're very good. They did it for Widow very explicitly in patch notes, saying, well, we've made Widow better because you're going to ban her anyway on the maps that she's good at, which just means by process of elimination, if they do not get banned on those maps, you end up with a Widow that's overpowered to a extra degree on those maps by design. I just don't think that's something that I want them doing, and I don't think they have to do this, don't get me wrong. And there was the Reaper Tracer situation, which I think me and Spilo wanted to talk about bans, and the day before they released patch notes saying, well, I mean, it's on Flashpoint and Control that these characters are better. We can kind of do this now, right? And I think that kind of like looseness is something that I just disagree with in general. Again, I don't think it's the end of the world, but go ahead.
I'm gonna need to see that patch note. Either Blizzard, either Gavin's gonna have to bring it up, or someone has have to bring that up. I don't know if I fully just buy that off the rip. I'm not saying I've read every single patch note, but like
we might need to bring it up on. So we do sometimes
I
read the patch
need to
notes.
see that because I don't. That just sounds a little ridiculous to me.
Yeah, sure. Part of the reason heroes like Reaper and Tracer had the damage reduced in the past was due to the shift to the 5v5 format. Solo tanking and less frequent peeling made flanking heroes more effective. Along with their strong performance on certain maps and game modes like Push and Flashpoint, this is now less a concern with the introduction of map voting and hero bans, which help limit overperformance. So we're restoring some of their damage potency. So they kind of like call it in there. And that's not entirely the whole point. It's also, we reduced this a little bit too much in the past, but they are more happy to purposely make something a little bit far. And I think we're like 5 trains down the line here now, where we've got we got perks, and we got sub roles, and we got all these new heroes, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel the thing is, I feel like all of this is kind of purposeful, right? Hero bans allow the development team to move faster and do more cool, interesting things, which allows them to get the public reputation of the game turned around. So it's not like I want any of this changed.
Can you just send that to
or
me
even
real quick so I
removed.
can read it?
Yeah, sure, man. I'll put it into the group. Um, yeah, it's not like I want any of this changed or anything like that. I don't want any of it removed, but it is one of those situations where I just think this is the development direction, right? We move fast, we knock the Lego onto the floor, the kids put the Lego back onto the table pretty fast, but we can keep moving it. And I just think, I don't know, Blizzard has always been the quality company in my mind that focuses on giving the best experience they possibly can and not purposely designing things in a way that is just in terms of public perception, just purposely done wrong. And now we're in a situation where, yeah, the developer incentives have shifted, and I can't point to anything in particular apart from maybe that. But it's clear as time has gone on, they've been able to move faster. And I don't want that changed, but I just want it noted.
No, I think it's a relevant criticism, to be honest. I think even as a sort of champion of hero bans, I think that what you've cited as a developer note is actually just, yeah, it screams wrong to me. Like, it's like screams wrong as a approach to be like, well, you guys are banning them on the maps that they're good, so we'll make them good on the other maps, is not a philosophy I would agree with. But I think that's more, to me, that's more a point of the developer approach than the issue of bans. But you may argue that that's what bans is enabling. So I think that's probably where you would go with that.
Yeah.
That the bans has enabled
And
that mentality.
Yeah, anyone comes up to me and says, "Well, I've got my agency with hero bans. I like them more." I'm like, all right. It's not really something that I'm going to die on the hill of. They're the worst thing in the world, but like there are some influences they have, right?
Yeah, and again, I think.
I'll say this.
Go ahead, AVRL.
I don't agree with any sort of balancing philosophy that basically says, well, if you ban it, then we'll just buff it to whatever that, basically the summary of that comment from the developer commentary there. But what I will say is, like, we've seen what the game looks like without bans, and we've seen what the game looks like post bans. And I picked the post bans version of the game over the pre bans every single day of the week, because of the pre ban version that we had in the game. So many more problems that existed when you had no agency to impact your game at all in terms of like what heroes got to show up in your game, or even map voting. You got no agency in that part either. To at least have some agency there is something that's better for the game. If it introduces a couple of other problems, then we can do something to fix those problems. But I would rather have those problems than the problems that we had before we had bans.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed entirely. I think just...
No, I think
No,
you're
go
right to bring up these criticisms. No, I think it's fair. I think the stance you've taken to me is very fair. Feel free to correct if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it's like,
Yeah.
I like bans, but these are the problems with the way how we're using the bans, and I think that's actually good to flag up, because that's our job in many ways as content creators, is to flag up like, hey, this is, I'm not sure you're doing this right.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I think my reluctance to just say bans are a good thing is my overwhelming faith in the current development team's ability to actually fix the problems if they're given the proper incentives to do it. Right? Like we have a development team that is more reactive, more cooperative, and like they literally do patches like 2 days later than the patch if it's bad, like the Sigma bull changes. Like they can fix these things. We just need to give them the incentive structure, and I don't think it's there anymore, to be honest. But yeah,
I think that's a sentiment of too far, honestly. I think, I really like the development team, and obviously it's been a while since I've been in any contact with them, but I don't think any development team deserves that kind of free reign. I think put me in put all four of us in the development team, and I still want hero bans because we're gonna fuck up, and like there's gonna be shit that's like just takes too long to figure out, and I want the power to be like, and not even, and sometimes not even that they're overly problematic. It's just like, I don't want to deal with this right now. I just don't want to deal with like Widow Hanzo on this map. I just don't want to deal with it. Or yeah, Jetpack Cat is released and I just don't want to deal with it. I think that's totally I think that's actually just a legitimate good, net good, universal good in the video game. Is like, I just don't want to deal with this right now. And that's my perspective. But anyway, anything else on bans? I know we could go. Any other sort of pressing things before we talk about, let's say, like maps and stuff? It might have a similar trend, but
One tiny note is just that they will have to figure out like the whole balance between bans and new content, where there is a legitimate criticism that human psychology hates new and the unfamiliar. It's why they like the choke slop, right? Even though they might enjoy it when they play it less, but it's less scary and overwhelming, and so they'll still choose the safe crappy option. So like with bans, it's like, I don't care what your opinion is on Jetpack Cat, but she did not deserve a 95% ban rate or whatever it was. Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, to the point where like there were a lot of tank players that I was coaching that didn't know that they could wait. You can actually hit her with your hammer when you're being ulted. It's like they didn't know because they never played versus her. They just knew that like Realth said, it snowballed. So that's definitely a negative thing for your game long term, because you need people to have at least brief exposure to your new content and for them to form their own opinions and not to just follow community perception. And then also it kind of kills the entire point of new content if like half of the new content is not even being banned. Like whether it's a new map, right? Like these cool map reworks, nobody's playing them because nobody's voting for them. Like we saw that with Atlas. We've seen that with a lot of the map reworks. So they're going to have to find a way to like Jeff Kaplan things and say, you don't actually know what you want. You have to play the new content and then you can form your own opinion, at least soft to a little extent, right? So I know that there's been some discussions about how they would do that. I'm not smart enough to figure that out, but yeah.
Yeah, with map bans right now, I see so many situations where people come to me saying, I don't want to play Gibraltar or I don't want to play Numbani. And I'm like, have you ever played on them to know how you play on them? And it's like this lack of experience that they self-selected away from these map types where you have to go up a lot. And now they just don't want to touch it, right? There's some exposure therapy to be had with these type of things that I think you can self-select out of given the choice.
I think this is an aspect of the whole banning and player agency that's actually super fascinating. I think it's actually, and it is literally, worth loads of literature. Like there's loads of research and discussion within the dev industry on this, because you guys have already pointed out, there's like actually loads of spiral effects that come, which is just like one, there's the community homogeny, right? Which is, I noticed again, this is one of these things I'm sort of looking at the community from very, blank slate. Even when you go to the map vote screen, the way people seem to homogenize based on like what gets selected early is really stark. Like you go to like a map, the three maps come up, and if like two people start voting for, let's say Hollywood, it's you just see like 8 votes get slammed. And I again, anecdotally, I saw this to be a lot more true in 6v6. It felt like in 5v5 people voted less. Again, very anecdotally, it's not a big data set. Just off of my observation, people just voted less for the maps. They were just like, you'd get like 3 or 4 votes wins the map vote. In 6v6, it was like everybody's getting like 10 votes in for Eichenwald, right? But then all of a sudden, on some blue moon, 3 votes come in for Atlas early, and everybody's now voting Atlas. So there's like the homogeneity of like actually on the screen. There's the homogeneity outside of the game where like everybody's agreed that Jetpack Cat is the thing we hate. The content creators told me that I should ban Domina because she's busted, so I'm just gonna ban Domina. But then you come with the counterpoint where you're like, but if that's what people want, is that like to some extent our job is to serve, even if their desires are stupid? And that's maybe Spilo's correct point of like, you need to sometimes do the Jeff Kaplan thing of like, no, you guys are dumb, listen to what we're telling you, play this map or play this hero. Yeah. But then the counterpoint probably the developer team wrestle with is like, but maybe at some point our job is to serve them. If they say we want the dumb thing, give us the, because ironically we applauded earlier the fact that they're now listening to about, let's say, 6v6. But if they had taken the perspective of like, well, we think 6v6 is the dumb thing, so we're not even going to bother. You guys are dumb. Sometimes you do actually just need to be like, okay, this is what they want. And that's how I feel about the whole like 6v6 and 5v5 experience. Is like, people want this. You may not think that's a good experience. You may think 6v6 is terrible. You may think 5v5 is terrible. It's like people are telling you that they want it. And at what point do you just let them have it?
Yeah. One more tiny little detail as well on the ban thing is Realth, I think, brought up earlier, is that like it does really favor certain one tricks, because remember we were all like, oh, the Mercy main is going to drop to gold. It was actually kind of the opposite, where it's like if you're playing a one trick, it's super easy to protect your character because people collaborate because they want to win. So I've had this experience recently where I freaking hate Roadhog. So I get this jackass Roadhog main, Locks Roadhog, which by the way, Custa, I love you, buddy, but you cannot buff Roadhog. Please, buddy. Second, so the Roadhog mains, he favorites Roadhog. So what does he do? bans Ana, Zen, Orisa, which I like to play
Yeah.
Ana, Zen. So I'm annoyed about that already. Then all my teammates want to be helpers, and they're going to ban Ana Hog too, or Ana Zen, Orisa now. So now not only am I unhappy because he's banned my main, which is like whatever, not a big deal, but also everybody in my team enables the Roadhog because he is the one hero that we need to win, whether that's Widow or Mercy or Roadhog, the counterable character. You remove those counters from the game, and now you've just boosted that guy's SR. And that happens a lot more frequently than that player's hero gets banned. And the reason why this is so bad is not just because that player's boosted, but because what happens when Roadhog does get banned? How is that player playing? Okay, here's another one. What happens when Ana doesn't get banned? And now that Roadhog player who has had Ana banned in his last 9 games all of a sudden doesn't get what he wants. And now he has to play versus Ana. And so I think this leads to like a lot of like really heavy match volatility because you have these complete fraud. I mean, even map voting, right? If the Junkrat player gets to vote for Eichenwald every game, then all of a sudden he has to play Gibraltar. It's over.
Yeah.
Like it's over. He has no experience playing on that map because he always got what he wanted. So I think that, like, again, I love the hero ban system. I think it's just more important to kind of raise these problems and hope that maybe if there's not solutions, there needs to be at least sensitivity that there are some significant drawbacks, and we need to be very aware of that. So my solution would be like, hey, we need to make sure that there are heroes that are not enabled by bans as much. That's my solution. It's not to remove bans. It's to be like, hey, this is a problem, so let's not make Roadhog anymore, right? But there are some legitimate criticisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard because, like, are we designing Roadhog to be played into Ana or to not be played into Ana? Do we have to take away some of Roadhog's interactivity to anti-nade by giving it damage reduction instead of healing a little bit more? Like, move it that way? Because personally, I'd rather a situation where we're in first off, we're in a format where Roadhog can exist without being blown up because he has to be the solo tank. But then Roadhog always have to play into the anti-nade, and we balance it with that in mind. Right. So there's this very purposeful balance and design instead of saying, well, there's all these things that roll into it, and sometimes the Roadhog rocks up with no Ana Zen on the enemy team, and I have a terrible experience, right? Like, and that's just that's where I come from.
If you balance Hog around Ana not being banned, and then Ana gets banned, you have created a monster, essentially.
Yeah, 100%.
And this is like, I remember this is a discussion we were having like 3 years ago, like on this very podcast, when because they've been doing this wrestling game with balance for as long as Overwatch has been a thing, where it's like, oh, we gave Hog the ability to vape on a meter now, right? Because that was that whole reason for doing that was like, we gives him more counterplay. Because if you naded him before when he was doing the one cooldown vape, GG, or you slapped him, you interrupted him in any way. And I think that's again, yeah, it's just like a really frustrating. You guys are right that, like, you know, there's the bans that enable it, but it's just like, it's a fundamental flaw, I think, of current Overwatch. And I say current Overwatch in the sense that, is there a future where there's like enough counters to everything and everything is more dynamic enough that we don't need to worry about, like, well, if it's Roadhog, you need to ban Ana. But then if you add Kiriko now, because that was the whole discussion that also, I'm just going to be the boomer who brings the old discussions back to be like, don't you remember that this was still a thing we were talking about 3 years ago? It's like, well, now, but they pick Kiriko. So when the auntie comes in, she goes cleanse, and then we're back to where we were, and everybody's, you know, rocking as they were. And now with Discord also being on a cooldown, if there's a Discord that was the other counter, that also gets cleansed, and then that's also, we're back to Roadhog is now raid boss unanswerable. So maybe just fuck Roadhog, I think, guys. That's my...
Yes,
it's all right.
Yes, like legitimately, that's always been my argument, is that like these conversations feel so fruitless because we're like, man, what is the solution here? It's like, well, there's a reason why we always have these conversations around the same half dozen heroes, right? You can play Hazard into Ana. It's hard, but you could do it. You know, you can play Ana into Tracer. It's hard, but you could do it. But you start talking about Widowmaker, you start talking about Roadhog, there just isn't a solution. These characters just suck.
Well, on that note, I'm going to take it to AVRL because he hasn't chimed in for a while, and he might have heard Widowmaker and Awoken.
I love bans.
How do you feel about map? How do you feel about the map? Yeah, just man keeps it succinct. How do you feel about the whole map situation as well? Like, do you have any thoughts on the map votes and how they've kind of affected Overwatch?
Generally, still pretty positive. I mean, there's going to be situations where maybe people are just not going to have as many opportunities to play Watchpoint Gibraltar for one reason or another. Either maybe they just don't ever want to play it and then never learn how to play it. I mean, I think that's just going to exist. But I would rather be in a game where you have player agency to make choices about what your gameplay experience looks like than the opposite of that where you don't. Right? Like, those are the two options. And I think one option is just clearly better than the other one. even though you may introduce some new problems, I'd rather have those problems than the opposite set of problems. And a lot of this stuff as well, like, we started talking about Roadhog. Yeah, I mean, the problem isn't, oh, is the bands good or not? It's like, no, actually, it's just the hero problem. Actually, it's just because the hero is the problem, and then everything else on top of that starts to create other problems around the hero that is initially the problem. So, it's to me, it's nothing to really even do with bans or anything like that. It's like, well, you have a hero like Roadhog existing, I mean, that's it. What else do you need after that? Like that's the core fundamental.
The damage Roadhog has done to this video game.
I for legit, I'm gonna read Gavin's response, which to be honest, I'm skimming and I can still already feel like I'm gonna come away being like fuck Roadhog. But he says I really do not want to go to bat for Roadhog, but from the point of view of the matchmaking, but from the point of, well, he has to. It's his job. Unfortunately, he can't really come out here and be like, yeah, guys, I'm with you. The dev team is revolting against Roadhog. Fuck that guy. Like, unfortunately, he has to come and bat for Roadhog, which is really a position none of us would want to be in. But he says, from the point of view of the matchmaking team, if we have tank heroes that have a sub 45% win rate, we're really creating bad scenarios for everyone on the team of teams of tank players that pick that hero. So those teams tend to get stomped a lot more. So we can't really let tank heroes be that weak. To which I say, fuck
Gavin,
Roadhog.
what's the pick rate? Ask Gavin, what's the pick rate on people that open Hog versus swap to Roadhog, please?
That's some very specific.
This is the same thing that I said about Vendetta, just applied to a different hero in a different role. Roadhog is fundamentally a hero design that should never have been a tank. Just like I don't think Vendetta should be a DPS. Roadhog's design, that's a DPS design. That's just fundamentally not a tank design, if I'm completely honest. And the problem is you're shoving a DPS design into a tank position where it causes problems because you have a design that is basically a DPS, and you're not capably doing the job of what a tank should be doing because it's not a tank design. That's the problem.
Yeah, the difference between DPS and a tank, in my mind, is just lethality and sharpness in their damage profiles and the ability to generally be able to do the things that the game mode demands. But yeah, like in my opinion, Roadhog could be fixed. As I said, I think I said to Spilo, it could be fixed in the 6v6 format if you just threw your vape at the other person, right? That just be able to donate it, turns it into a Zarya profile, and you've just fixed the hero, and we've solved all of those bad tank combinations in the process. But realistically, I don't think there's anything to that bursty damage profile of a hook every 8 seconds or however long it is now that can be fixed because the format fundamentally demands consistent pressure. And if you don't have that consistent pressure, I think there's like you really can't do anything with the hero. Sustain ability to stand on point, consistent pressure.
I don't want to like can of worms this, but you were the priority pass guy, the DPS, the conspiracy theory with Roadhog, and man, I played Roadhog in 67 versus Roadhog with Roadhog in 66, and that guy was just as awful, man. Like, so.
All you have to
do. Okay. We get to change the entire video game, make tanks completely different, make them a lot bigger, change the armor, all of that for 5v5. I ask you to give one hero a vape that you can throw at a different hero, and I fix the majority of the problems with the 6v6 format. One ability, right? And that's all I ask for, right? Right, sure, Diva Zarya is a little bit problematic, but Roadhog's the problem, right? Can we... Anyway.
Wait, so you're proposing that instead of being able to heal himself, he can only heal other people, or is it a choice of both?
Oh, you can choose, yeah.
Okay, so it's a Zarya bubble, but you choose whether to give it or receive it yourself, and it's not a meter anymore.
We have it
presumably
on 2 separate abilities.
But haven't you proven that? Haven't you proven that with 5v5 Zarya as being a fundamentally flawed design where you can choose, you'll always choose yourself just for consistency?
Oh yeah, but I don't have to fix your bad format, right? I don't have to fix 5v5. I just fix 6v6.
I'm gonna just say this guy has been a problem since day one. I booted up Overwatch in 2016 and I hated this fucker. I booted up Overwatch in 2026 and I hate this fucker. So like, I think send him to the farm, just send him to the farm. Okay. Yeah, so let's then talk about the other big new change, perks. So AVRL, how do you feel about perks?
Good. Nothing really. I mean, it's just fundamentally reinvigorated the game in terms of different options you can have and the depth of the hero design and giving more levers for the devs to potentially balance as well. I mean, you're not going to get it perfect. Sometimes you are just going to find a perfect, you are just going to find the ideal minor perk and major perk that you're going to pick every single time. But I think they've done better. I think perks have evolved over time. We've, the perks that were obviously too good got moved around between minor and major, or they got changed or potentially even removed. You know, stuff like the original double nano from Mana, where you nano yourself, stuff like that. You're like obviously extremely strong, and that had to be dealt with. And more you're starting to discover that again they don't get it right every single time, but more and more when you're moving in directionally the correct position, which is you're starting to get more and more heroes where you have to make a meaningful choice between what perk you actually want. But it's another situation where you look at the game pre perks and post perks, and I choose the game post perks because the game pre perks was not as interesting. The game post perks a lot more interesting in terms of where you can take a hero's design, and the fact that you can change it up potentially season to season as well, and give a hero more depth and different depth season to season instead of just being the same thing every time.
Interesting. Realth, any thoughts on perks? Do you agree, disagree with that?
I'm this guy. I'm always this guy. I don't want to be this guy. I never do. Sorry, Custer. I don't like perks in general, and I kind of haven't liked them since launch. I think they create lots of poor interaction quality between heroes in the game. So the problem is they either improve the gameplay loop in an interesting way that I think is a positive improvement on the hero, in which case put it in the kit, and at that same time, I think, well, if they improve the gameplay, why are we gating it behind either a third to 2/3 of the match, and sometimes you don't even get it, right? If there's an actual improvement, base get it, which wonderful, they're actually doing with quite a few of them. But I'm for that if they're good ideas for the base kit.
I can
Or they
answer that
just
question for you right now.
Progression.
Because no, not even just progression. Because you're making a meaningful choice in the game between A and B. If you want to add it to the base kit, you're just saying, "We'll add everything." You get 2 minor perks, 2 major perks. We're not about to add 4 things from the perks into your base kit to make you like some giga overpowered thing. It's about having a minor and a major and a choice between various options. So this whole thing, like, why isn't it just in the base game? Well, it's like, bro, if it was in the base game, your hero would just be like, yeah, just give me like 10 perks, just all shove it in the base game. That doesn't work, man.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about trying to curate it for the ones that are like really good, right? Like for instance, Life Breather, right click explosions, right? Gives him a bit of lethality, lets him be able to duel a bit more, gives him the ability to interact with DPS in a way that he couldn't previously, because his damage profile was so flat that he essentially couldn't kill anything without it moving out.
Well, the
the
goal
way,
is
right?
to have
that
2 options that are that good, so that you have to make a meaningful choice in the game to react to a situation in the game, react to a matchup in the game, where you make a choice based on your play style or what you're facing. So it's not like, oh, there's one good option just put into the base game. It's here's
agreed.
2 good options. We're not going to put both in the base game because that would be stupidly broken. You're going to make a choice between which one you want to have so that you can make a meaningful choice in the game that you're playing.
Yeah, but at that same point, we're now gating off that interesting loop. And I do think it is good that you can choose between 2 different modes of this character that have been improved in a meaningful way. But we're getting that off behind a lot of playtime in the video game. When quite a lot of this is so good
Is
that
it a
just
lot of
needs to go
playtime?
base kit regardless. I mean, for
I
major
don't think
perk,
it's a lot of playtime.
I think it is meaningful for major perk in terms of the amount.
It's meaningfully well
game.
for major perk for sure.
And here's the other thing. This is part of the system that also tries to incentivize people not to just counter swap all the time. Because the fact that certain things are gated means you have to put some level of meaningful game time into the hero mid-game. Otherwise, you're just going to get into counter swap again. This is one of the key things that actually does something. I'm not saying it fixes counter swap, but at least does something to incentivize you to not constant counter swap. And that's a good thing.
Which is why I'm much more for it in terms of 5v5, because I think they do need that to mitigate quite a lot of the counter swapping problems. Like, I think 6v6 is a lot more resilient to specifically like hating on the tank with abilities or other things like that. And you see all of the tanks have some sort of adaptation. But like, aside from that, there's quite a lot of bad interactions, like Zarya speed boost and health regen on bubbles. I'm like, okay, well that just makes the bad interactions
They can just change
worse.
that.
Yeah,
they can
of course
change
they can
that.
change it. Yeah, they can change it, but you can say every little bit of this interesting extra power that you give to a hero, okay, we can shave, and then eventually we'll have this beautiful core of perks that is good enough that it never creates any unfun interactions. What about Illari holding captured sun for 8 seconds, just sitting in the air as a Narnia robot, and then just shooting somebody after all the cooldowns are out? It's one of those interactions that I'm like, does Bastion need 3 grenades? Like, is that one of those things where I'm like, cool, I'm enjoying the video game more? Like, does Anna bounce nade hitting me from across the map by accident one of those things where I'm like, because I've been hit by bounce nade across the map. I was
Not
like,
every perk is good.
yeah,
But I
I
think they're
agree, but
improving. But I
I
think
think
they're improving overall.
I think they're improving too. I just think that quite a lot of these are ones that people would say are fun to play with, but aren't fun to play against. And even if they're improving, I just don't think the depth is needed on the video game. I like the game at its fundamental core, where quite simple heroes interact in a very complicated way together, right? So you have these simple kits, you can come in, you can understand, they're very telegraphed, they're very understandable to other players, and then they interact together, and that creates emergent depth from the gameplay, right? But the problem with perks is, on top of that, you have these questions as to whether they have these perks or not, as to whether you actually can be able to see that. Like there's no telegraphing on the kits or anything like that for the perks. If that was there, I'd be a lot more for it. But that obviously that's an obscene amount of work, and that's not realistic for the development team. Um, it it's a difficult one. Like in general, I don't think my format of the game needs perks in order to have that level of interaction quality. I can understand how if you are struggling with things like counter swapping, that gives you an easy out. If you're struggling with things like I don't know. It's very difficult. I think that when you add an extra player, the amount of interaction between players becomes so much more that you just don't need the extra complexity.
Yeah, we may have to add that asterisk to all of Rel's takes. Basically, it's like this is for
Yeah,
6v6 primarily. You know, like this guy, he's like fuck 5v5, whatever you guys are doing over there.
I'm nothing if not consistent.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting on the perks. I think I'm also largely side with AVRL. I'm curious to hear Spilo's take, but I think that like maybe this will surprise because I was the anti counter swap guy. I was like, this is the fucking worst thing ever. I'm not sure the perks need to be earned. I'm not sure that's one part of the perks I'm not necessarily sold on, because like I think to the point about meaningful versus not meaningful time spent, it really varies on game mode, because it's like on push you can swap and you'll still get it, but then it's like control or whatever. There's the ones where like you swap, you can't. I don't think it's control, but there's the ones where you swap and it resets at halfway. And it's like now
then you get it on the third round guaranteed.
And then everybody's swapped and everybody's lost their perk, and we got to build again. As you know, so like I think it would be better if there's a world where it's just like you can just swap them in spawn. Like you can just pick your perks in spawn, and if you die and you want to change your perks because they swap to a different hero, you can just swap your perks back like in spawn. Like I'm not sold on the need for them to be this counter swap answer. Like I don't think that's confusing the issue in my mind of like they're supposed to be there to customize your gameplay. I don't think they need to be there as a we're punishing this guy for counter swapping. I think they just should be a part of like the characters. Like I want to make sure this character like fits this situation a bit better. So here's me tweaking that in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but are we building then on top of that? We're building more of a facet system than we are a perk system? Because are we just saying every character, okay, you press this button in spawn, and we did this for a little bit of time in our code. We tried it out. We called it cores for a bit, where you press a button in spawn, it swaps your hero to a different mode, right? We gave Zarya a bit of cleave on her beam so she could do the main tank role a little bit more, that ended up being put in as a perk. We gave D.Va the ability to boost us through people and deal extra damage with the boosters, make her a little bit more of an initiator rather than a 1v1 angle controlling duelist. So you can do these kind of like adaptations on the characters, and I have no problem with that at all, given that and I think the tank role probably needs it the most for the most part, right? That is the role with the least player base, and at the same time, it's the role with the most problems in terms of adaptability. But we started putting it on supports and DPS, and we just thought, why are we doing this, right? What are we really gaining, right? Supports don't need that much adaptation. They don't really. DPS, do they need that much? No. So it's just for the tanks, and really we only need it on it's initiator, off tank, poking tank, kind of like combinations. We just need it so that these bad ones like Roadhog aren't problematic, and at that point maybe we just fix the hero. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think that's a fair point. I think it's not necessary on support and DPS as far as I can see, but I think I would probably say that on par, people are more tied to their hero, and like I want to play Ana, but you know, slightly different. Rather than if you added, if you did like a placebo effect thing and you made two heroes, that were functionally just Ana but with different perks, but one was not called Ana and looked different, and one was Ana, people would still pick the Ana more, I think, disproportionately, because they're like, I want to play Ana, but I want the perk that makes her actually now Mizuki, right? Like, I think it's actually helpful from player psychology perspective to let people just be like, I want to customize my Mercy or my, Genji. But, this is all speculation on my part. Spilo, any sort of things to chime in on the perk front?
Yeah, I mean, I like the system. I like the system of progression, and as Avril was saying, like choice, like the feeling of choice is what really gets people going. It's like why people like roguelikes. It's like you always have to, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, that's really fun. I think, if anything, my criticism of perks has been that it is one of, we talk about the things that have not been polished because it feels like worthy attention. I think perks is one of those systems that feels kind of like left behind, actually, as of recently. And that might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think that there's a lot of questions that kind of remain unresolved with perks. I agree with Avril that overall the quality and power of the choices has been better and better and better. Like, they've gotten rid of the trashy perks or the wildly OP perks. They're getting better and better and better. But the system still has a lot of questions for me. One example is the transformative counterplay perks. For example, you have Sigma with the float, Sigma with the melee knockback, Wrecking Ball with the adaptive shields, Hog with the speed on vape. Do these perk choices come way too late in the matchup to have any meaningful impact on bad matchups with counter swaps? That's been my question. It remains unanswered, and they stay at major perks. They've purposefully put transformative perks in majors, but I actually don't know if that's actually a good decision. My argument would be I would prefer counter swap perks to come as minors, but be much weaker versions of themselves so that they don't just. And that's my second problem, is that I do think some of these counter swap perks, like the adaptive shields on Wrecking Ball, they aren't just counterplay, they just shut down the matchup entirely. I don't know if you guys have played Wrecking Ball into Ana or vice versa. The matchup goes to be groggy Ana, right? Very sharp for Wrecking Ball, can be very difficult, to being the Ana almost can't do anything versus the matchup. And that's the case with a lot of the Zarya perks, like Zarya with her alt fire. Like, so we're talking about not just the counterplay options are incredibly strong, but you have certain characters, Tracer's another good one, where when they get that perk, the character is absolute raid boss. And they actually, you saw this quite literally happen with the Tracer balancing. SCB, I don't know if you know what happened over the fall, but basically what happened is Tracer had a recall perk, I don't know if you remember, where she would recall and she would get two blinks back, essentially. So you'd recall and you get two blinks back. One of the strongest perks in the game. Tracer was not oppressive, but it was certainly oppressive in higher ranks. Okay. So too strong. She gets sledgehammer nerfed to her projectile size back to preseason 9. She's trash, feels terrible to play into, but they didn't touch the perk. They finally adjusted the perks to a position to where she's better, and they've kind of given it back. But it was a great example of one of the characters where, like, she suffered kit nerfs because they didn't address the system problem. And this reminds you of what we were talking about with bans, right? Where it's like all of a sudden we have a Wrecking Ball is not that OP until he gets the perk problem. So for me, it's like I actually like perks a lot. I like the choice. I like the progress, but I want there to be actually like strategic thought and effort being put into perks. Like, for example, I don't love Orisa, but I do love the fact that the shield comes as an opportunity cost. So you have to decide what do I value in this particular situation. Even like the Sigma float perk, it gives him some counterplay, but he still is not very, very mobile, right? It feels like not all perks are created with that design space in mind. Some of them are just complete free value, and some of them are counterplay perks that remove any counterplay from the counterplay, which is really weird and backwards. And I would like to see that change. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Pharah Major perk. Go ahead.
Finish your fire point. Sorry.
Yeah, so this is one of them examples of like the free value. The Pharah Major perk, she gets bonus damage after using a mobility cooldown. Well, you're always using mobility cooldowns this Pharah, so you just have this one rocket that does like 180 damage or something ridiculous. Maybe actually more. It might be 200 damage. It's ridiculous. It's like there's just some perk. It's like it feels, again, going back to the larger point, it feels like they just kind of like perks are just going to kind of recycle some updated perks, but they haven't finished the system. Guys, we're not done. Like, I don't think this is the finished state that we want perks to be in. And we're like, to Rel's point, it's like we're kind of like, oh, guys, wait, but what about what we wanted to do? And that's kind of my problem. So I actually don't mind the way that perks function right now as a progression system. I think it's honestly okay. But I do think that like they need to do some serious thought about the placement and the power spike of some of these perks, and it just doesn't feel like a finished product.
I agree with that part, but I you know what? I don't even think there should be counterplay perks. I'll take, And the reason why is like specifically you talk about stuff like the adaptive shield and ball just completely shutting down honor and just shutting stuff down. I think that stuff like that is just not good for the game at all. And you also can't, in my mind, unless somebody gives a really good example how you could. I don't even see how you could make that a minor perk or you could make that like a weaker version because it's like a thing that just exists or not. Like, what are you gonna do? Like you're gonna make
I think
the
it's a timing
more
thing.
difficult?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
1.5
yeah, but
seconds
then-
is a
but-
long time.
Cool,
You know,
But so okay, so you make the timing shorter, but if you hit it, you still just fully dog walk at her. That's the problem.
And
yeah,
The
but
problem is,
that's
like,
a
if you
skill
hit the
play.
thing-
That's a skill
No,
play.
but you
The thing
still, but you no. It's a skill play, but the problem is you just shut down the matchup, and all you've done is like you made it so that like the timing is
No.
shorter, but if you hit it, you just completely shut down the matchup.
But
Like,
I'm
that's
saying
the part that I have a problem with. Like,
if the
don't think you
window
should be
is
able to just shut down the
smaller,
matchup.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not my argument. Is not that if you play it perfectly, there's nothing the Ana can do. My point being is that you need to outplay the Ana. If Ana can outplay you, if there's a push and pull, like, oh, I got the timing wrong, I guessed when she would do it wrong, or I didn't react properly. It's like using Tracer Blink, right? It's the same kind of a concept. With 1.5 seconds in time to kill being what it is, you don't have time as Ana. If you get slammed, you're dead. That's just how it is. Like there is no window of vulnerability. So, and the worst part is that it doesn't even change when Wrecking Ball uses his adaptive shields normally. When you use adaptive shields prior to the perk, when you use adaptive shields after the perk, it's the exact same thing. You're doing the exact same button press at the exact same time, but now you have CC immunity for 1.5 seconds. So I understand your point. Like if it does completely shut down the matchup, I completely agree. I still think the character needs to have that weakness. Like I said, the Sigma float perk, but there's a little bit of counterplay. Like if you're still playing Sigma and Gibraltar, you're an idiot. But at least you can get 5 minutes in if you have it on a minor perk, the float option. But no, you don't get it. You get it 12 minutes in. It's too late at that point.
The counterplay should be closer to like you have a reduced CC time so that if you get hit by CC,
you're still disadvantaged.
maybe you don't eat the full sleep. It's like a half sleep, something like that.
I was gonna say,
I just don't get slept at all now. Like that's bullshit. I don't like stuff like that. But
fair
like,
enough.
yeah, I mean, like Farah just getting a bunch of damage is free value perks, boring. Like I'm not defending perfect design. It's clearly not perfect design. It's very imperfect design actually, and I've been saying that. But I have also been saying it's directionally improving. So I think they're learning.
Yes,
Unfortunately,
I
it is a
agree.
learning process because like this kind of thing hasn't been done in this genre before. Overwatch just did it first, and they're trying to build the plane a little bit while they're trying to take off the runway. And so we're just going to have to work through some of this. Like we've
just gonna
worked through
make-
some pretty terrible perks, and we've gone to a better place afterwards. And I think each season, each progressive season there has been, the perks have typically been better than the previous season, in my opinion.
Agreed.
I just had to come in to fact check you and stop the Paladins players molding about Overwatch doing this first, because obviously like a fast set system has been in Paladins and exists in Dota as well before Overwatch did it. So I have to moderate fact check you on that one. Sorry, AVRL. Go ahead, Realth.
What Paladins
that
players?
exists
Where are they?
to allow
Are they in the
people
room?
to flex. I played Paladins once, so yeah, it allows you to flex between different roles in a MOBA is the idea. And the thing is, sure, we can put all these cool new systems to make different versions of heroes that are interesting, but at a certain point, when you go to Overwatch, are you really flexing between different roles? When we look at like the ball like parry shield thingy, you have loads of problems with like skill scaling on that. Like if you have it as a timer, it's always going to be in a situation where it's guaranteed to always hit at the high level but be unusable at the low level if you balance it properly. I think parries in general are a little bit iffy.
I love parries. Shut the frick up. Shut your mouth. Shut your dirty mouth.
Well, they
Parries are
put
great.
one in the game and it's not working. I mean,
It's not a parry. Can you imagine playing Sekiro and you had 1.5 seconds?
Is it, you could say
yeah, but we're gonna have an ability that's not usable under gold.
Well, why,
That's
okay,
the problem.
Well, what about like a Genji deflect? Why do we not have a problem with that versus a ball?
Because it's a resource.
Because
that's
Genji
the
can't
idea of
do
it. It's not a
anything while he's
parry. It's a
deflecting.
resource that you spend.
So there you go. So that's your answer then, isn't it? It's just like you need to aim for that and not I push the button and you can't do shit.
But Ball already has enough resources. He just has an extra massive amount of value on top of his
66,
kit
isn't it?
on the things he already can
I'll be
do.
right back, really.
No, he's fine. He's fine. I think my main problem with the tanks are just when they reduce the interactions between heroes in general. I think quite a lot of the issues that tanks need to flex around is just, oh shit, I'm taking too much damage. And if I take the I'm taking too much damage perk at the same time as I'm not taking damage, I become completely uninteractive. like kind of Orisa is if you're not shooting her. Like, there's just no point because I mean I've got a shitload of overhealth on my fortify, so haha, you can't touch me. So it's a difficult one. Like I think obviously AVRL's right, they're getting better, but only to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think I agree with AVRL's point that like basically fundamentally they shouldn't just answer like a counterplay. Like it shouldn't just be that like the Doom, you know, even like you could argue the Doom parry is sort of like his Doom perk is sort of like a parry where it's like the first second of his block now absorbs. But at the same time, I think that's again one of these things where you're looking at your perspective, you're not looking at the other person's perspective, because it's like, well, yeah. Ana already has very little counterplay. The sleep is her one counterplay, right?
We designed the video game this way and for a purposeful reason,
right?
Surely, right?
Right.
These are the quality interactions that we designed the video game on, and now we're moving away from it. For some reason,
I think that's the point. I think that's what I mean about it shouldn't just answer it completely, because already the game has built that into its, or originally it already built into the idea of like, it's a tough matchup for Ana versus, I mean, we really focused on Ana because I think she typifies this point the best, by the way. I'm sure there's someone who is molding about Ana specifically or other heroes, but the idea already is in theory that Ana is a skill-based answer to some of these mobility heroes where it's like, she is weak. If you miss the sleep dart, if you whiff the sleep dart, you're fucked against most of these guys. And so to add a thing that allows them to then again answer the sleep dart, it then is like, well, what if they do that? Then what the fuck do I do? Like, do we need to add another thing that adds counterplay to that? Like, oh, actually my sleep dart goes through your block for the first second with my perk. So I think that's where I think they shouldn't be answering the counterplay. They should just be like softening it. So again, just a status resist answers this problem where it's like, okay, instead of sleeping for a full 2 seconds, I sleep for 1.5. That, like, I think that's just the better answer than you can't do anything anymore, sucker.
And the worst ones are the redundancies too. Like we talked about the far damage perk, but also like hitting a sleep dart as on a tank means that you've won the trade usually. But now we're gonna add a damage component, which is like whatever, and a 3-second slow. Like, bro, we don't need that. You hit the sleep dart, you've already won the engagement. So it's like making these sharp designs just like even sharper. It's like if you hit the sleep dart, congrats. But there's some of these perks, it's like they just do the thing, but they do it even more. And I think that's the absolute opposite. It doesn't change how you use sleep dart. It just makes it worse. Or better, sorry.
But yeah, I think to conclude, these are, I think, perhaps teething problems. And maybe Spilo's right as well, that they've actually kind of put them in and maybe not. Again, it just seems like a trend that I'm getting from a lot of what you guys' criticism and feedback is that the train is moving very fast now. Like the train picked up speed and stuff is flying. Like parts are flying in that high speed, pursuit where, they probably should have spent more time on like making sure the perks are all good and philosophically, like what are the perks? What is our aim, that they will always achieve these things and never leave these bounds. Like we can't have a perk that just breaks this rule of ours that and kind of ruins the game. So it seems to be the thing that comes up a few more times where it's like, okay, we got awesome content, which as we agreed at the start of the call, means everyone's raving about Overwatch. Everyone's like, yo, Overwatch is great now. But the cost is that there's a lot of these, stickling splinters in our hands. So as we play with our mice. So yeah, that's a little bit of a problem. Any other thoughts with perks before we potentially move on to any other like new additions?
I just think philosophically, you're asking whether the devs should be very tight or very lax on just curating the gameplay experience. And some people are going to say, like, I want more choice, but a less curated experience where more crazy, silly things can happen in the video game. And other people are going to say, well, they should curate everything and they're going to lock down on the concepts that are good and make everything interact in the best way possible, right? I think that any interaction, any movement towards the left side is one that I don't like, though I understand why they happen. But yeah, I think it's just a philosophy difference.
I mean, it might be worth asking, for whatever it's worth, you guys, where you guys do stand. Like, so Realth, you've kind of given your stance. AVRL, where do you stand? Like, how do you want to see them adapt the game as it goes?
In terms of perks?
In terms of like, do you want them to do these things where they like try to curate the experience to the players more, or do you want them to kind of like impose their will a bit more? Like, we want the game to look like this, and you will abide by that. Or do you want them to be, again, more like, you can decide, you can pick the map and the bans and the perk?
I'd rather have more agency on the player side. I mean, there needs to be boundaries. You need to like have a firm boundary of like where the walls of the sandbox are, but then you need to give the players the choice and agency to like make the game their game within the realm of that. So like setting the initial boundary of like what can and can't be done, but ultimately like giving more choice to the player within that boundary is the correct call in my opinion.
Philo?
I just like choice, man. You know, like this whole Slay the Spire thing with roguelikes, and you can choose any card that you want, but it's probably in the game's best interest to remove the really, really OP and the really, really bad cards, right? And I play a lot of Spirit Island, another board game that has had the same growing pains of like making every single new class basically in that game is a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more complex and a little bit more thoughtful, and they've kind of reverted some of their older things. But I like player agency, I like player choice, but I think it has to be under the umbrella of the developer's vision for the game as a whole, if that makes sense. So you play by their rules, but they're willing to like let you explore different play styles within those rules. And obviously I think the thing that Overwatch has done so well over the last couple of years is they're willing to change their philosophy to make it better. It's not as because things change. I think even did you guys see the Jeff Kaplan statement where he said that he, with hindsight, if he made another team shooter, he'd make it more individualistic focus, which I thought was like
Yeah,
really spicy.
weird for me.
Like that's all. Yeah, so that's an interesting take too. So like you can learn. People change, communities change, and I think nowadays
Finally,
we're
a
all like
Jeff take I can agree with.
yeah, we're all like dynamics and complexity pilled nowadays. I think it's just like gaming is so mainstream now that people just really like choice. So jackasses like me that want every hero to have like 4 different dynamisms is like that's like the more modern approach now, and I like that personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost worried about asking Rel's take on that quote,
Oh, you know
and
what Ralph's take is.
what might spiral into.
Uh, I don't know. It's a hard one, right? Like, I'm not a purist. I think that the fundamental thing is, from my perspective, and it will always come back around to it, is that I will prefer the developers to have more agency to make cool things in their game, right? We've ended up in a situation where the cool things in their game are I don't know, just extra things on the kits instead of making the kits interact together in what I consider to be a more deep way. And just fundamentally from the start of it, like, more stuff isn't more depth, right? Depth is the interaction between the heroes. Depth is like layers and layers of I support that person to this degree, then that comes. Yes, yes.
I
No,
mean,
I think I've already got my point across.
yeah, I mean, I think again, to reiterate my point from earlier, I think the good thing is that we're in a state where you have both those experiences now. I actually think this is the best thing for Overwatch that you could possibly ask for. I think actually anyone who is advocating that they should only go 5v5 or only go 6v6 is, in my opinion, a bit mistaken. Like, I think that would just be a huge net loss to Overwatch, because you've actually gotten a space. Like, you may feel, and I'm sure the 6v6 players in particular feel like they don't get enough bandwidth, and fair enough. Go, like, that's a very debatable topic. Like, you should absolutely be able to have that discussion, but I think that, like, it's pretty clear to me that they're just two separate desires. Like, there isn't this overlap of like one person who's fighting for this somewhere middle ground between 6v6 and 5v5. It's pretty clear to me that the reason why it's clearly become such a divisive issue is that it's just like two people want different games. Like, that's it. There's like one set of people who like the experience that 6v6 brings, and there's one set of people who like the experience that 5v5 brings. So I think actually, like, pushing to eliminate one over the other would just result in Overwatch losing that other's entire player base. It wouldn't be that, like, I mean, maybe some fraction of them would convert, but by and large, what you're going to do is just tank the count of players playing Overwatch. So what you probably want is the best, like, case scenario is like there's an ideal version of each of them that is, like, allowing people to have that experience that they want. Sorry, I think, was it Spilo? Did you have a hand raised?
Yeah. I think there's like a very clear distinction between like what's key jangling bloat. Like, this is going to be a little harsh. Nothing against the game mode and people that enjoy the game mode, but a little like Stadium-ish, right? Where there are so many buttons, but it is just objectively a more casual game mode because so many of those options just don't matter at all, right? It doesn't matter that you can do that. It's not good at all. It's not even a viable choice versus actual viable competitive decisions. And I think it's stupid to say that, like, adding more buttons and adding more complexity, whether it's perks or bans or this, objectively adds more complexity. It might not. It depends on how it's executed and how well it's executed, right? Because we've all played games, whether it's Rivals or Stadium, which have a lot of buttons, and yet it's relatively easy. And for people like me, it gets a little boring. And we've also played games that are relatively simple, but are very complicated and have a lot of depth to them, right? And I think that, like, for me, it's like more buttons, not always better. So if we're going to add new content, whether it's perks or whatever else, I want them to introduce meaningful choice into the game. That's kind of the way that's how I'd simplify things.
Well, that might be a good point to segue to talking about Stadium, because I actually didn't even bring up Stadium yet. And, you know, we should, because it's a huge, I gather, again, it's hard for me to know, and maybe none of you guys know, like, I don't know if this is public information, but, like, I don't know how many people are playing Stadium. But it is a big release, and it's worth talking about, like, how we feel about it. So Spilo, that was kind of your thoughts. AVRL, how do you feel about Stadium?
I mean, I'm glad it's there. I don't know how popular it is currently, but it is in a bit of a weird place. To be fair, I haven't played it in a minute. I mean, I used to play it a reasonable amount. It was probably one of my more played modes. There was a period of time where I was probably playing it more than the base game. But I don't know what the future, like, I don't know what the end game of Stadium is in terms of design for Team 4. Like, I don't know where they're trying to, you know, where the ideal landing place for the game mode is. Probably, as I could probably guess, it would be, like, obviously as a main pillar of the game in terms of one of the key things you play in the game. But in terms of design, like, where's like an end point, or like where is the future of the design of Stadium going to be? Because where it is now is, like, probably fine, but I don't know. I'm starting to lean away from it and just maybe prefer the base game a bit more. But I think it's okay. I think it's like fine. But if it bleeds player base, they have to start making some decisions about what they're going to do with that game mode. And I would hate to see them end up killing something like that, because they've had multiple things in the past where, you know, we've seen the PvE come and go. We've seen the different stuff come and go with, like, you know, what was
They had
that
those
little
team
game mode you
deathmatch
played
things. They had
with?
like those various team deathmatches with, like, the Junker
What are
Queen
those?
statue and.
What is the thing where you go around collecting the coins? That little mode they got rid of, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, like, you know, click the
I did
coins,
not
the
like
Mario
that.
game mode, little
The
Mario game where you
hero
collect the coins.
mastery? No, okay, you're talking about something else.
Yeah, something like
It was
that.
a deathmatch thing. It was weird.
What's the deathmatch thing? What's
No, it
this?
was what you say. Like, it was like a bounty deathmatch thing that they used to play. I don't know. It was a
The
while
point
ago.
is,
I don't
it's
know,
gone.
dude.
Point is, fuck it.
I'd like to find out. I'd like to know a bit more about what their, like, vision for the future Stadium is, because I think it's like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's like kind of gone stale a little bit, but maybe it's heading in that direction for me a little.
Realth, how about you?
Well, they released that Stadium has less players than OpenQ at the moment, which isn't a sparkling recommendation of OpenQ, as it is a sad state of Stadium
5v5
player base,
open
I
queue
think.
or 6v6 open queue?
No,
66 OpenQ.
There is no
right?
5v5 open queue.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize. Yeah.
Oh, good. In my opinion, like, and I'm not as informed, because quite frankly, I dabbled in the game when it launched and then gave it up. Like, Stadium is, in my opinion, just like the you know, the old quote, like, the breadth of an ocean but the depth of a paddling pool, right? There's so many options. I can choose whatever I want, but every time I'm designing into anything, I'm literally just closing off my hero into one aspect of that hero. And sure, that's really interesting, but, like, the reason why my hero interacted with others in a cool way was because, as Cassidy, I had a roll and a flashbang and a right click and a left click, and all those things layered properly and interacted properly with enemies. But now, yeah, I had one game as Junker Queen where I was just insta killing people with an axe, and I just kind of, like, took a double take and was like, this must be awful to play into, right? And then I just turned it off and never went back on. I think Stadium's worth it entirely because it was one of the best moments of eyes back onto Overwatch, and it's had its hand in making Overwatch what it is now with the increased player base. Because if you didn't get those eyes, even if the player base didn't really go up for the Stadium patch by that much compared to, I think, what people think, but it did change public perception just by getting into the news, and I think that's enough for it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I play Stadium now. Basically, it's like my warm up. I like play a game of Stadium and then go into the I hate to say it disparagingly, but real mode. I think, and in theory, I should be the great target demographic because I love MOBAs. But I think the problem with Stadium is it just feels really flimsy. It feels really half baked. And again, this seems to reiterate the point that we just made, which is that it just feels like another one of these things where they added it, but they're just moving so fast that they don't have the time to be like, what is Stadium to us? Because what it feels like to me, it's like, when you play an RPG game, and within the RPG game, there's like a card game. And the card game is fun, but it's like, it's kind of shit. It's shit, right? It's like, it's you want to grind it, but the minute you grind it, you realize this thing has no depth, and it just like completely caps out with like two things. Like there's 2 levels of strategy to it, and that's it. And that's what Stadium feels like, where it's like, it could be awesome. Like there's a version of Overwatch where it's like, Stadium is the only game. Like it's the only game mode. It's a really well-developed, nuanced MOBA. But that's nowhere near where it is. It's just, and this is funny because I grind the shit out of those mini games in other games. Like I am the guy who will spend an inordinate amount of time playing Gwent or Machine Strike in Horizon or like Triple Triad in Final Fantasy. I play those games all the time, but playing Stadium, I'm just like, this is ass. Like you play this for 10 minutes and you've kind of gotten what you need to get out of it.
You know what?
Yeah.
I think I finally understand where an actual real end game for Stadium could be, and that is like when you got me thinking with the whole like, oh, it's the mini game within the real game, and that to me is like where TFT in League of Legends started, and so where TFT is realistically is probably where Stadium could be or needs to be, and I'm not saying it needs to be literally make it TFT. I'm saying like what TFT is to League of Legends is what Stadium probably needs to be to Overwatch long term. Like it, honestly, it probably needs to lean heavy into the MOBA elements because it should be. Can you
explain that? Can you explain that? Like, what do you mean by that for people who don't know TFT? Like, what TFT is to League of Legends?
TFT is like the spin-off game of League of Legends within League of Legends. You play it in the League of Legends client. It's like it's like kind of big enough that it's kind of its own game now, but it's still played within League of Legends. It's like it's completely different to League of Legends, by the way. It's just like it's an
a
auto
card game, right?
game.
Like an auto battler card game.
Well, it's an auto battler game. It's like it has parallels to card games. I wouldn't call it a card game, but it's like in that universe at least. But like, yeah, like it's a spin-off game. And I guess Stadium is kind of like a spin-off game, but I think it needs to be more of a spin-off game. It needs to like lean harder into the spin-off. And maybe this might be a heretical take, probably needs to be slightly less like Overwatch and more like a true spin-off. Quake Don is saying turn Stadium to Deadlock, and genuinely, maybe that's the real answer, because gives Overwatch the ability to maybe compete a little bit more directly with Deadlock in that kind of way. But to really get into how do you get people like SVB into Stadium, you probably need to lean heavy into the MOBA aspects and push harder into that and take a bit more risk, rather than it just be like Overwatch but weird. If you're going to define your own audience, like TFT has defined its own audience within the League of Legends player base, you need to take a bit more risk and go heavier into the side, the spin-off game, and have it be less like Overwatch, which I know sounds crazy, super heretical, but I think that's what it needs to get its own identity. Otherwise, it's just weird Overwatch, and I don't think weird Overwatch has a long-term future.
I agree. I think it's, again, it just feels flimsy, and it feels like they have this cool idea. It's like, what if Overwatch was a MOBA? But it hasn't gone beyond that. Like, it really needs its own, like, balance ideology and, like, philosophy. Because I'm not sure the whole power customize it. Like, it should kind of abide by some principles. I think its policy, if I can speculate wildly, is just, like, throwing ideas out there. What would be cool? What would be cool? But you can't actually make a fleshed out game mode that way. It has to have rules and structure. It can't be like, what if I had a power that let me do this? And it's like, yeah, but now that's just... It's just completely wild, as you guys said. Like it sort of caricatures the heroes rather than builds them. Rather than being like, it's like a really awesome version of Junker Queen. It's like, this is just a stupid like Axe Junker Queen, or like Kiriko with 2 Suzus. I played against that the other day. I was playing Junker Queen, and it's like going up against a Kiriko with 2 Suzus. I was like, this is like actual death. Like, yeah. I cannot do shit.
But worse.
Yeah, it's like, wow, you know how that one Suzu completely fucks you? What if there were 2 now that completely fuck? It's just like, this doesn't It doesn't hold by any
Isn't like
rules.
isn't like the fundamentals of MOBA is that the player versus player isn't the only part of the game. It's
Yeah.
also like an architectural, environmental, player versus
Yes.
enemy objective game. And I think that's really where Stadium, like more so than almost anything else, struggles, is that it can't, every single like little edge case or strategy is something that the enemy players have to directly suffer under, like immediately. Like imagine Deadlock with no minions, like just nothing. It's just player versus player. Like how crappy that game would be. No farming, no minions, no bots, no nothing. Like I think like I'm not saying that that's not a game that you can't solve, but to Avril's point, it's like it really is just Overwatch. It's just Overwatch with more complicated builds. So it's like the player interactions aren't meaningfully long enough or interesting or complicated enough to where you're doing anything than just spamming at either an unkillable behemoth or one-shotting something. Like there is no other way to use your kit, right? Like there's even heroes in Deadlock that are not even KD correlated. They're all like objective, I one-shot your robot, I control the map, I flank, I distract. There is none of that in Overwatch. And it's probably what 66 or C5E5 like. It's literally just a death match. It's just a death match with who can build the most OP thing. And there is no like meta game whatsoever beyond I'm going to kill you, right? Or I'm going to be unkillable.
I mean,
Well,
Deadlock
ironically-
did release Street Brawl, which is literally what you're talking about. Like no minions, no anything, but it's got a randomizer of a couple of different items that you can get that can have upgrades before you go into the round, and it has certain rounds. So like it has done that, but I think it's put the depth on top of it in order to make it interesting. I just think these MOBAs need they need a lot of time in lane in order to learn what the enemy teams are building, what their kits are. That's the depth of MOBAs, and that's done at a slow pace because, quite frankly, hero-based shooters are so effing fast. They are crazy fast, and the time the spawn room is barely enough time for you to build your own hero, yet alone adapt around what the enemy teams are building the hero until you put a load of hours into it. And then there's that extra depth on MOBAs. Like, do you justify building damage in order to farm creep and farm the jungle, or do you go into abilities and being able to be utility? That just, I don't know. It just seems like MOBAs do have sharper hero-based interactions, but you're given that time in the game in order to learn how to deal with that
and
you
adjust
don't interact with it as often.
and adjust. And also, I don't have to interact with your sharp design. If you counter
Mm-hmm.
me, then there's other things, there's other places where I can get value. Whereas with somebody in chats like, well, it's not one shot or unkillable. That's okay. Yes. So maybe it's not one shot or unkillable. But my point being is that like basically every build is about how can I kill you or hurt you or how can I live? There is no other mini game to be played. So my criticism is not that Stadium's necessarily easier than the base game, like literally. It's the fact that it doesn't add any other meaningful choice. It's just I'm still playing Overwatch. That's the same thing. You know, it's just I'm just playing Overwatch.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
You're
just,
playing
Overwatch
crazy
is built-
Overwatch is what it is.
yes.
Yeah.
It's just
Overwatch
flimsy
is
again.
built on
Go-
quality team fights. Like that's the game. The game is
Yeah.
quality team fights. And then you take it into Deadlock, and that's why Deadlock is never going to capture me in the long run, because every augmentation that you put on the team fights actually reduces the quality of interaction between the heroes in that one, to the point where it becomes, sure, it is interesting and it is a different form, but it happens less often, and there's so much else in the game that I can't get that team fight pure like element.
Yeah,
of
I'm with
out
that
there.
too. I get annoyed when I can't flank and one shot somebody in Deadlock. You know what I'm saying? So like I understand, but it's like that is the fundamental aspect of MOBA, is that like you do have to play the game. You have to play the game. You can't just play the 1v1 all the time, right? But
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a version of Stadium, because we're talking about it so much, because I think we can all see that there's a version of Stadium that is cool and fully realized. But again, I go back to, just as someone who has spent so much time in MOBAs, they don't have an idea of what they want it to be. At least it seems to me like there's no actual vision of like, this is what Stadium will look like. It's just the first thing that came into your mind. What if they would do this? Okay, go. That's it. That's as far as the thought process went. There isn't like what would happen if this happens and what do we want the player to be doing. It's just like run it down main, shoot at each other. By round 3, everybody's just like, and the way you're incentivized to pick is always just like, just double down on one thing. It's never like, if you made a build that was like, I have a little bit of this, a little bit of, you just be garbage. So all you need to do is like, I'm the guy who shoots the most damage, or I'm the guy with like the 2000% health. And now like either if you didn't take the huge damage, you'll never kill me, or if you didn't take the like big anti-heal thing, you'll never interact with me. And it's just, there's no depth to it. There's no strategy, which again, it's fair enough because it's just probably a thing they spent very little time on comparatively to make. But if they were to put some time into it, and I honestly, I don't think they will, because as we've kind of discussed, there's like got a lot of other shit going on, and I don't think they will go back and be like, what if we actually made Stadium a real thing? But they could make Stadium a real thing.
I think Stadium, every step Overwatch or a hero-based shooter takes towards a MOBA makes it worse until it gets to a MOBA, because the hero-based shooter is the team fights are everything. We always focus on the quality of interactions between the heroes in any individual fight, and every step you take down that path towards a MOBA reduces that quality until you get to the point where you have so much choice that you're in a situation where you're able to think about it in the long form, and you have the macro and all those other things that come into it that actually put the depth back into the game.
But that's only if you approach it as what if Overwatch was a MOBA, not if what if we made a MOBA in the Overwatch world. I think that's the distinction.
Right.
Like they're doing it as like a what if we just tried to make Overwatch into a MOBA, which is obviously always going to fail. Yeah,
Stadium is a crack addict workshop mode. That's what it is.
Yes.
It's basically what it is. It's something that if you had the time and resources, you could just make Stadium. And that's kind of the problem, right? It's a custom game that you can grind and play, but then you're going to move on, right? It's not its own thing.
Exactly. And as AVRL brought up, like TFT is its own game. It's not like what if I was playing auto battler in League of Legends per se, right? It doesn't follow any of the same rules or systems as League of Legends. It's like it's an auto battler that has the League of Legends like world centered into it. That's what they need to do is like, okay, because you may need in the MOBA version, you may need Tracer to be a completely different hero. You may need her to play completely differently. She's still just called Tracer. And maybe there's something reminiscent of Tracer. Maybe one of her abilities is still to recall, but she doesn't blink anymore because that would break our rules of our MOBA, like for example, right? But that's not obviously the approach they've taken. They're just like, what if it's Tracer, but we gave her an item? Does that work though? You can't just say we gave it the MOBA rules and now it's a MOBA. It doesn't work that way. Like you have to actually construct an ideology of like, this is what it's going to do.
They have that own limitations on design space for a MOBA that don't exist in a hero-based shooter. So if you go halfway between, you end up with those limitations, but none of the freedom.
Right. Sorry, Realth. And just so that because there's going to be some actuallys in the comments, because Stadium does have like a really passionate fan base, you're not wrong for liking the game mode, but your game mode is unpopular and has fallen off dramatically in player popularity. Like objectively, we know this. As Realth said, we know it's less played than 66, which is like, I mean, 66 isn't
still
even
not
that promoted.
great,
Hasn't
by the way.
66 hasn't received a fraction of the development resources Stadium has over the past year, for what it's worth. And I think even just like the skill level of the player, like you're looking at a game that on theory people has a higher skill ceiling potentially, but it is played overwhelmingly by majority of casual players. You're not stupid for liking Stadium. You can enjoy Stadium, but also don't be surprised when during this discussion, we're saying that, yes, Stadium doesn't deserve the resources that it's getting and probably won't get the resources it's getting. And this is why. Just how it is. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the guy who is like, I like the mint guacamole flavor ice cream. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, dude. Like, I believe you that you really like that. But here we are trying to brainstorm how to make the ice cream sell more. Like, we're trying to make the ice cream actually sell, not just serve you. And that doesn't make you invalid for liking the thing, but it's like, well, how do we make this thing actually a product, not just like a thing that 5 people play?
It's why I can't be a purist and be like, we can't do perks, we can't do this, we can't do this. All the heroes, we need to release one hero a year that's super mobile, because realistically, this is a business and they're going to need to release content. So like, there's a balance between being a purist and realistic. So,
sure. Any other thoughts on Stadium before we move on? AVRL, any rounding thoughts on any of that?
Not really. I just want to know what the devs, from their perspective, what their like idea of the future setting looks like. I'm just a little confused about the direction of it. That's it.
That's valid. And I think that also lends me well to ask you guys about the dev team. So, we're talking about the state of Overwatch. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Like, how do we think the devs are doing as a job right now? I kind of have a vague idea judging from what you've said, but let's have the proper discussion about it. So Spilo already gave some thumbs up. So Spilo, how do you feel about the dev team?
All of my criticisms with Overwatch comes down to cadence and basically nothing else, because obviously I don't agree with them one-to-one with every decision that's being made, but I think it's incredibly egotistical for me to assume that I have the only correct viewpoint. So I will very vocally disagree and explain why I disagree, and I think I'm right. Otherwise I wouldn't say anything, but so do they. So my thing has been the quality, the objective cadence of things, as we've mentioned a million times, but beyond the quality of the work, I love the communication, I love the honesty. People like Megan Reardon, the community manager, senior community manager, Gavin Winter, Alec Dawson, Aaron Keller. I mean, there's just all the people that I interviewed, Daniel, Kyle, and from over at the Spotlight event. Somebody behind the scenes who's had a lot of conversations with these people. They're not just putting on a corpo face. They are legitimately hardworking, passionate people. Jeff Kaplan talked a lot about in his interview. They're incredibly good at their job. They're incredibly creative. They've worked really, really hard, and also worked really hard in a lot of circumstances where there was like just zero positive reinforcement from an external viewpoint, right? A lot of criticisms, a lot of it unfair. They've worked continually hard through that. And I think as well, like I just can't tell you how my expectations have changed so much since there's been this brutal honesty and transparency. Like having conversations with Gavin Winter, I'm like, whoa, this guy is this guy's a dev. And I'm just like, oh, what's up, Gav? Yeah, this sucks. Why don't we? I'm like, whoa, this is a freaking dev for a AAA game. And I hope that they continue to do this. I hope that they don't get burned for this. I think that overall the reception has been very positive to that, because that is freaking bizarre. Like that just doesn't happen in the AAA gaming space. And I am like huge credit to Aaron and the team for like not only enabling, but like harboring, I say, fostering that culture, because that is such a refreshing breath of fresh air. I cannot tell you. And Aaron Keller, he's just like that person. Super charismatic, super kind, super humble. Just nice and passionate people. And I hope that, especially in this, like the world's super negative and super social media. And yeah, I mean, I'm super critical too, but like, I hope that if they see nothing else, that they're like, yeah, keep working hard, guys. Keep it up. I know I'm going to be called a shill for that, but honestly, they're people and they deserve all the praise in the world for that. So they've done a great job.
Again, the shill accusation is just bizarre in general. Like, I mean,
they're good. They're nice people, man. They work really freaking hard, like they deserve it. So
you can't just say nice shit about anyone. You have to be negative.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone deserves shill accusation, it's AVRL. AVRL, how do you feel about the dev team?
No, I think they're great. I think like this is a team that is very different to the Overwatch 1 team. I mean, there are some people obviously, that have worked on both games. But I think I saw a stat line that it really blows my mind recently. That was like, Aaron Keller has now spent more days as the game director of Overwatch than Jeff Kaplan has in the live game itself. I'm not talking about like before the release of Overwatch 1, like during the live portion of the game. Aaron Keller has now spent more days as the director than Jeff Kaplan has. So, we've really turned a page. Like a lot of going back to the start of the podcast, a lot of the complaints I originally saw from people out there who were shitting on the game, and a lot of the bad negativity was again coming through from grievances about a previous version of the game that no longer exists anymore, from like 3, 4, 5 years ago, from a completely different dev team. People got burned by the Overwatch 1 dev team for the decisions they made. They're like, oh, I can't trust Blizzard again. I can't trust this Overwatch team. It's like, dude, it's got different people working on it. The current dev team is not only larger, it's got different leadership. Bobby Kotick's, and even just like beyond the dev team in Blizzard and Activision, Bobby Kotick's not even there. The finance suit who was holding Jeff Kaplan over the fire about like the whole money and firing people, by Jeff's own admission in that like streaming podcast, that guy's not even there anymore either. So like so many people have changed across the board, either in Team 4 or surrounding Team 4. You're really just looking at a very different dev team now, with a completely different like direction of how they handle the game, how they handle the PI, how they handle everything surrounding the game. Spilo even said this at the start, but like season 9 of Overwatch 2 was when you start to really see like, oh shit, this dev team is different. They're changing how they're doing things. This is not the same dev team we've had for however long. And how willing they've been to communicate and actually talk to the game. The fact that you got Gavin Winter showing up in the chat, answering questions, dropping tidbits. Like that would, I can't imagine another game where that actually happens. Of a game of this scale, of this budget, of this quality, at the AAA level, of this level of success. You imagine another like person in Gavin's position or shoes and his expertise dropping in the live chat of the podcast saying anything like that. Just doesn't happen. Like the level of access people get, the willingness of them to answer questions, to be open, be vulnerable. The fact that Aaron would go on a stage and do a 2-hour talk about how badly they fucked up and how they had to fix it. That's a level of vulnerability. I think like you just don't get that out of game developers at this level of this quality game.
For sure. And again, I as I mentioned before, it's like I was there in that era. Like I'm not even one of the OG Overwatch creators, right? I'm not one of the creators who was like 2016. I was there and interacting with the dev team. But like 2018, I think I started making content, and like I was there for like end of Jeff Kaplan era. It was a completely different beast. Like even as someone who's been out of the loop, even like now I can still see, rather, is what I'm trying to say, that like there's still so much more communication. There's still so much more like direct involvement with the dev team. So I think there's like, it's just a completely, you're literally talking about a different dev team, but you could also metaphorically be talking about an entirely different dev team, because they're just like night and day difference. But Realth, how do you feel like they've performed in recent time? Like, do you think they've been hitting the mark more often than not?
Yeah, I wouldn't be anti-hero banned if I didn't have a ludicrous amount of faith in the dev team to actually be able to fix the problems if they had the incentive to do it, right? Like this is the crazy take from somebody to have, that the devs can actually fix the problems in the video game if they just have to. Obviously world-class communication. They're completely reaping the rewards of it right now. As Avril says, completely insane to have somebody in the chat who's a lead dev. Just not seen anywhere in any other video game that I know of. Most responsive, most productive team that I've seen. Aside from that, the problems are that they're weighted down by a list of decisions made in the past that everyone considers good, or everyone considers untouchable, that essentially are bringing down the average quality of the gameplay experiences that I'm unhappy about. And I'm happy to go through them, but realistically, that's not for the devs. The devs are making 5v5 the best version of 5v5 that they can right now. And regardless of anything that I have to say about it, that is their objective. That's what they should be doing. Just pay me some love at the same time.
You did say you'd be consistent, and I appreciate that. You've been kind of consistent as an advocate, Realth. That's what can be can be asked for. I think that like I mean, Spilo, anything else you want to add, by the way?
No, I mean they've nothing else to add.
I was gonna say, because I there's a mention about like the gameplay element, and there were some questions in chat as well about like why have we not talked about balance. So I just want to like set that context, which is that we haven't had a group up for over a year on Overwatch. So this is the state of Overwatch debate to kind of lay the land of like where we are. And I didn't want to have a section explicitly talking about balance, because we will be here for 3 hours just talking about balance.
Yeah.
I know I got these guys here, and if I
don't
sat
think
down,
balance is too bad either. I really don't think it's that too bad. I don't want to open that can of worms, but
all
like,
right.
It's
Well,
bad
again,
during the fall.
This guy.
I'm sorry. I will. Okay, I'm muting now. I'm sorry.
well, like I said, that microcosm should tell you that even a simple statement like "I think the balance is fine" is going to turn into like a well, what about this hero?
Yeah.
What about that hero? Let's talk about this hero. And then 6v6, 5v5. This. So we will have those discussions. The podcast is back for a little bit of time, so we will, and I'll grab most of these guys, if not all of these guys, again to talk about like, okay, guys, we got a new patch. What do you guys think of these heroes? What do you guys think of that hero? But like like I said, that would be the entire podcast if we decided to like talk about like, let's go talk about these heroes. So I just wanted to get a refamiliarization, like a state of like, well, where are we in the big picture? How do we feel about Overwatch? So, that's why this is not going to necessarily explicitly talk about balance. I guess I could ask you just as a sort of prelude where you guys rate the balance, with like a small explanation of like, I think it's a 7 out of 10 because this. So just so we get like a sort of, a rough outlook. Spilo, where's your like summary of the balance at the moment?
Not a meta grade. This is a balance, which is, I think, pretty easy to objectively measure just based off of public stats. There aren't too many outliers. So I think it's fine. Not too many outliers. Now, oh, you don't read the stats. That's what balance is. It's not design or health. It's just balance. There's no Vendetta is probably one of those outliers. Maybe EDR is still overperforming a little bit. Ana, I think, is underperforming. I think, but yeah, balance is fine. It's not trash.
Okay.
I don't
I'll
always
take-
like all the characters that are stronger, but yeah.
Thank you. I like that. I'll take it to Avril because I'm sure Realth has like multiple things to say. So I'm going to take it to Avril first. Avril, overall, just your impression of the balance of the game.
Dude, I'm gonna say it. I rate the balance a solid 1 out of 1. So the balance
Oh,
is
the bait and switch.
it's fine. Like I have a bit of a
Let's go.
problem with Vendetta. I mean the cat's not well designed, but like I don't see the cat as a huge problem right now. Vendetta taking over a little bit with high win rates, but like I think the balance is generally fine. Also, like it's gonna be a bit over the place when you have like 5 heroes dropping at the same time.
Yep.
So, and you know what? The best part is the dev team has been really quicker than ever over the past year of addressing balance issues. Part of the complement of where the current dev team direction and mindset is, they've been very willing to like make quick changes if necessary. Maybe they don't always tune the correct numbers. Maybe they should have tuned a different number to the one they did, but they're willing to act on it at least. So I'll trust that they'll make the right decision. But no, I genuinely just don't have any major problems with the balance right now.
Realth's about to come in with a wrecking ball. Maybe pun intended. How do you feel?
I don't think it's that bad in terms of balance. However, in terms of the interaction quality between the heroes, I think it is so high variance right now. If you hit different bands than you should be, you get an awful game. And that's not balanced. Like Jetpack Cat is balanced, right? We're not saying Vendetta isn't even that bad in terms of being good, but it all depends on the types of things that are in the game. And I just think there's so much variance right now that realistically, there's massive problems, right? That can't really be encompassed by the word balance. The game's balanced, right? It's fine. The gameplay experience is, I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Hmm. and you know, I can already assume, not to put words in your mouth, that you had your opinions of where 5v5 is, where 6v6 is. They're kind of like different places, right? It's like the balance of each game is quite different.
Well, they seem to have accidentally put the DPS passive up to 30% over 15% for some reason. I don't know if that was intentional. Genuinely, nobody's
On
mentioned
tanks?
it anywhere. I think it's only on DPS. It might be on tanks as well, but it used to be 15-15, and now I tested it. It's at least 30 on DPS, which wasn't really noted anywhere. So that's one of those that I'm like, my game's just
It
slower.
was always 30. That was always 30.
No,
It's
it was
just
15-15
Oh,
for
okay.
for a long time. They changed it down, I'm pretty sure, specifically on 6v6.
Oh, on 66.
Um,
Gotcha. I
Then we
understand.
have, for my mode, we have things like bull roll through perk. Yeah, we got 2 tanks, guys. Putting it to a flat amount of damage on a roll through perk does double the amount in my mode than it does in any other mode. I mean, yeah. Come on, my tanks are evaporating. There's a bull flying around the point, and you can't do anything about it. So like,
And
there's
your
a
health
couple of
pools are
things like
smaller
that.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's a couple of things like that it just is a lack of care for the mode more than it is. And I don't consider this to be 6v6 balance. I consider this to be them not thinking about the mode, right? So I don't know how mad I should be realistically, because I don't consider it to be intentional quite a lot of the time. Obviously, I'm mad, but don't get me wrong. Like, there's only a certain degree I can get to. The passives, the sub rolls. I don't know why we have some of them. Kiriko is now healing for 40% of the healing they do. That's pretty interesting. Obviously, win rate's crazy across the board for Kiriko, so the argument can be made that it's good for the low ranks. Bruiser passive is a travesty. It's a hard one. In terms of balance, it's so difficult because, again, just high variance.
Yeah, no, I think you've summarized well. I think you can clearly extrapolate like why this, like, you know, just that example you've given, it kind of shows that like that's just one of many, or perhaps every interaction is kind of just not, it's not given the same nuance and thought that it's being given in 5v5. So, you know, hopefully it seems like they've at least made noises from everything I can say that they are going to give 6v6 more time and attention. Like they've clearly acknowledged it in several ways that like we should have done something about it, and we kind of want to pay it some time and attention. So, and considering how popular it still seems to be, you know, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't start, you know, turning an eye towards that more. Any other thoughts on that? And then I want to ask you guys about the matchmaking real quick, and then we'll start heading towards concluding thoughts. Any other thoughts on like the balance, just on the big picture that you maybe want to flag up?
Oh, I completely forgot before I go. The tank cooldowns in 6v6 are buggered. What 20-second on a Junker Queen shout? What are you doing? Come on, guys. Like, please. It is the team peel, it's the engage, it's the speed boost, it's like vital to the kit's function, and it's 20 seconds. Please lower these, right? I just want them like all halved in efficacy, and the game would flow so much. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a fair complaint. I've heard that one from Sam many times on especially on 6v6. Okay, let's go then to matchmaking really quickly. I think Spilo mentioned that there had been I didn't even know this, that there'd been a rank reset. Again, it's one of the interesting things. Like what I noticed is like a returning player is just like you could like I was like that. The game's fucking crazy. The variants and especially the weekend games were awful. But you're telling me there was a rank reset somewhere in there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, tell me about the because they don't really tell you that when you return. They're like, by the way, there was a match reset. So be worried about your game quality.
Yeah, it could be confusing because you would notice if you'd played last season because you'd be like, wait, why am I replacing games? But you're right that it's not really like communicated all that well. So that's actually Gavin, take note of that. That needs to be communicated. If that's going to be an entire marketing move, then for crying out loud, please leverage it because if we're not getting players playing out of it, then why the frick do we have these things? It's just basically it's a soft MMR or a soft SR MMR whatever reset. And then you introduce calibration modifier for the 10 games. So like you're having incredible variance between those 2 games or 10 games because those games matter a lot for your placement. And then to add insult to injury, you have a calibration modifier that lingers for like another half a dozen games. So essentially you actually have like 16 rank reset games where those 16 games matter a lot in terms of where you place. I mean, I literally had masters players and platinum lobbies and vice versa. I've coached players that dropped almost 2 entire ranks within 3 days, 20 games, because they got unlucky or whatever else, and then now they're completely smurfing. It ruins the entire season. It just ruins it. I did a whole video about it. It just ruins the entire season. They're not good for match quality. They don't reset people back to the rank that they belong. They're also terrible to pair with content drops because people that exploit the content within the first day or figure it out in the first day get massively boosted. Because literally we saw this, the example I used in the video was like Domina, right? Like Domina was insanely OP in the first 2 days because she got ult charge off of her ability healing. And you could also heal off of a shields. So if you exploited that with Domina before she started getting banned, you were like literally the best tank in the game, 5% win rate, whatever. And then that gets patched like immediately. But too late. I've already finished my placement games, so frick you. And it's like what people used to do when you saw those like gold players that were masters back when Brigitte was released. You know, it's just terrible. It's just terrible. It's terrible for matchmaking. It's bad competitive integrity. It's I think one of the worst thing that Overwatch still does is the rank reset. And I don't want to hear, we only do it once a year. That's an entire season with new content that has dramatically reduced match quality. It's terrible.
We're all aware, though, right? The purpose of it isn't anything to do with anything other than just making it so that new players can come back. That's the only purpose of it. It's just exclusively negative apart from that.
But it's super damning about it that SCB didn't even notice that or didn't even know that. It's like, well, then what? Then why are we doing it? Like, then we'd at least need to like advertise it or something so that like, why I'm getting nothing out of this. So
yeah, maybe the devs will say there was a thing that I didn't read, which is entirely possible, by the way. They might have been like hey, we reset the rank. But like, as I was just looking back, like I remember the pop-up came on my screen that was like, congratulations, here's your reward for playing in 2025. And it was like, you haven't played in 2025, so you get no reward. So I was like, oh, well, cool. And then that was it. Then it was like, go play some games. So I didn't see it if there was a thing, but yeah. AVRL, anything to say in defense of the matchmaking or the rank reset or...
I don't actually have an opinion on this. This is like probably not super my area of expertise, but just echoing what Spilo said on it, I guess.
It's not like a matchmaking problem. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's that it's fundamentally broken, the concept. Like there's nothing wrong with a calibration modifier in a vacuum to like prevent smurf protection, but it's like saying that we're just going to randomly give calibration modifier at certain periods of time. It's just really, really toxic. Like there's nothing wrong with the way that ranked is supposed to work, but then when you rank reset, now it's complete chaos. Complete chaos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is why the majority of the time when we do rank resets, it's actually a joke's on you, we didn't actually do it, and it's kind of like a fake one that doesn't really do quite as much as people would think, because there's, to my knowledge, there's no real function of them apart from getting people back in the game.
Yeah, I wonder. This is another one where I'd be really curious to read the like data, like what the devs have on their side. I remember this discussion cropping again. This my contribution to the podcast is to remind you guys of what was being discussed 3 years ago or 5 years ago in some cases. I remember when this discussion first came up when we were first talking about a rank reset, and I feel like it was good then because it was like we'd really dragged a long time of Overwatch history into many different iterations, right? We had like this was like we haven't reset ranks from some guy who in 2016 was top 500 and then came back in Overwatch 2 and had like GM MMR or whatever, right? And it was like, okay, let's get some rank resets here because it's been so long. But I sort of see exactly what you guys are saying about like a yearly rank reset now has less, and for everyone is less justifiable. Gavin says players were definitely asking for rank resets for a long time and the monkey's paw closed. Yeah, and I was one of those people. And I think I was one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure I was one of those guys who was on that train, and I still think that had utility. And like, you know, even if we say that like on the concept level, it's creating really bad matches, I think it was worth it to do it once at least. What the frequency of that should be is an interesting one, and also I think whether you do it for everyone or whether you do it for the people who just haven't played in a long time is another question, right? Is like if someone played, let's say grinded the fuck out of season 9, you reset for season 10. What was the need for them to get the reset? Like the reset is supposed to be for this guy hasn't played in 2 years. I think we need to be a bit more like uncertain about whether they're, and I don't know if they already did that or not. It's a lot of questions of like how they handled it internally before versus how they handle it now. But I would be very curious. I'm sure Gavin can't tell us the exact nitty gritties, but I'd be curious as to like what effect it has on the matchmaking, what benefit it has in terms of player engagement, player retention. Like, what is the quality of the matchmaking? How do they measure that? Like, it's just a lot of questions. I don't know if you
If
guys
it's
have
for
any.
engagement, you could just disguise it and make it a really soft reset. Like you basically don't move it at all, but you're fooling like, oh, look at that calibration, but it's actually you're gaining and losing the same amount of SR as you would in a normal game. Like whatever, man. Like lie to the people. I don't care, but like do not like we can't have freaking. I won't say who it was, but that one streamer guy, it's like part of its new account system too. The guy is literally like a low diamond player who placed GM1. Like, come on, guys. Like, it's like he's boom, 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 all the way down the ladder, throwing every single game that he's hitting on the way down. It's just like, oh, it's painful.
Okay, so Gavin actually has a good response here. He says, they were always soft resets since we started doing them in Overwatch 2. We've made them softer each time until Season 18, and Season 1 was the same as 18.
Even softer.
Just like caress me, please. Just caress me with these. we on the Versus team watched Spilo's video and have been thinking about how to improve it. There you go, Spilo. They are aware of the problem. But nice. do you also think the reverse is also possible? Then Spilo, is it like, you know, you said like make the reset so soft that the players think there's a reset and there isn't. Do you think the reverse is also true, which is that the reset is soft and the matchmaking is fucked? Just in a vacuum, like the matches are bad and you're attributing it to the reset when it's actually it was just a bad match that would have occurred regardless.
I can because I profile check. You guys, if you guys have played any of the new things, you'll profile check and you go, wait a second, this player was this rank last season and then they're this rank this season. How is that possible? Like whenever I have a Cassidy with a Mercy Pocket and a Flashpoint mat, those in my chat will remember, who's just literally one-shotting my entire backline in a Diamond 4 game on a calibration. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Oh, this is a Masters 2 player. Okay, well, there you go. That makes total sense. And I look at my players, and I have actual Diamond 4 or Platinum 1 players. That's the problem. Like, I don't have to attribute. I can literally just look at the profiles and go, this player climbed an entire rank in 8 games.
But is there not an observation bias at play, which is that's like the one occasion that happened compared to 11 people who were in the correct place, or 9 people who were in the correct place?
there's observation bias, but the reality is that objectively, whether match quality is better or worse, you introduce significant more volatility with rank resets. So it's like saying, oh, I'm having a really crappy day today because I slept worse the night before. Would have been a crappy day whether I slept worse or not? I don't know, but sleeping poorly doesn't certainly help things. So maybe it would have been a bad match regardless, but rank resets introduce a lot of volatility in the match objectively, whether that's 25% worse matches or 70% worse matches. It might be a jetpack cat banning thing where people are way over exaggerating how bad things are, but it's still bad. It's still bad.
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, I think it got worse. I think there's another variable, which is the play, like what time you play, because like anecdotally, upon my return to Overwatch, which is like during the weekdays, I was like, yo, this feels pretty like the lobbies make sense. And then it got to the weekends and it was like, holy fuck. Like I climbed in SR and the lobbies got worse. Like, like the rank went up, but the quality went down. And I think that's like another variance that I don't know. I don't really have a point as to like what they can do to factor that in, but I feel like that's another factor where it's like, if you're a weekend player primarily, like, does the quality of the games get affected as well? Like, are you boosted in some regard by the timing of when you play? Also, Gavin says, something we already do today that we think we should lean into more is that we reset players in a softer... the chat keeps scrolling down, sorry. We reset players in a softer way if they've played more recently, so that's a place we'll likely tune more.
Yes, that makes sense. Like, there's already like SR decay if you don't play for a while. So like you were saying, SB, having some sort of meaningful replacement calibration if you haven't played in a long time, sure, that's fine.
And, maybe that's what's happening. Unfortunately, there's just so many variables. Like, I want to give the devs some leeway here, which is that, like, I also don't think they're dumb. Like, I think they're really good and smart, and people like Gavin are very good at this. And I do wonder...
This isn't the devs. It's not the devs. That's the thing. It's not why rank resets happen. Is my
no,
decision.
but
my opinion. Sorry.
The way the reset is done, obviously, they're not just like push the button and everything is reset. There's like a sophistication to how they're resetting people. As Gavin is illuminating, it's like different to different people in different ways. And I do want to give them some leeway. As much as I love to join the matchmaking is shit club, like, hey, if I lose a game, I want to blame it on the matchmaking. But, like the guy you're talking about, he could be on an alt account. He could have been, like, he maybe hasn't played in a long time, but he's an FPS grinder. So, of course, he's Cassidy popping people's heads with a mercy pocket. Like, maybe he would have done that anyways. Like, even if he was perfectly... I'm not making old excuses, but I must say that, like, I think there is a level of observation bias that we don't give credit for.
Sure. I mean, listen, I'm the matchmaking simp normally. I'm the guy that's always singing the praises of like, hey, it's a skill issue. Matchmaking is generally like really good. You don't want performance-based SR. You want visible modifiers because it's completely honest. You don't want this Marvel Rivals crap. I'm just the guy like this. You can just check. I mean, what was somebody in chat was saying like Hotties placing in like Diamond. This guy is a champion tank player placing in Diamond. Something's wrong, right?
Sure.
Something's wrong. And so it's not just it's not just a systems critique though. Obviously, it's more of like we're doing this because it's engaging and it's actively trashing match quality. My argument is if it's actively trashing match quality, then it's not engaging. That's the problem.
Right, it's a superficial engagement that costs retention potentially. Like you may get someone to play.
Right.
Sorry, just to finish the sentence, but they may not stick around because they're like, this fucking sucks. Carry on.
Right. No, that was exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on matchmaking? Realth, anything you want to add on just matchmaking in general?
I think matchmaking's as consistent as it always has been. I think apart from this, been fine. I think just the variance in matches between hero bands, just making the matches just infinitely more weird in a way. Like you end up in a situation where, oh god, my match has been ruined by Jetpack Cat, and we just missed the ban. So yeah, I don't know. Like the matchmaking's fine in my opinion, always has been fine.
Maybe we just shouldn't have rank resets. I'd be okay if we didn't have them, honestly.
I'm just a realist. I'm like, they're gonna do them. So it's just like, can we make them better? Can we make them weaker? Can we not?
We didn't have to do them. They were very resistant to doing them in the first place, and people complain like, we want rank resets, and they're like, no, it's probably not a good idea. It's going to make things really wacky, and then it made things really wacky. It turns out that's exactly what happened. It's like, you know what? I'm one. am I in the minority here? I just don't even think we really need rank resets personally.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
I think there is an argument for like a point in time. There was like you can't have a forever like. Okay, so if we were to apply like a real like philosophical foot in the door Socrates argument, you couldn't possibly have like an infinite game running and never reset the rank because there's like you're running into a lot of problems, right? Like you can't have
You just said
like
decay, right?
But it's just decay. We already have decay. I don't think anybody's against SR decay, right? Like,
Doesn't decay solve the problem that SVB's talking about though?
well, again, decay is an interesting one because it's like people feel it's also the player perception element. People feel robbed of SR if you decay it, right? Because they're like, because the player interpretation of decay is you're forcing me to play every so often so that my rank. This is what I remember. Again, my boomer contribution is I remember when SR decay existed, and what people said at the time was, oh, I didn't play for a week. I went on holiday for 2 weeks, and you punished me by decaying my SR. Fuck you. This game is like exploiting me and it's forcing me to play. So I think the
Maybe
decay
just
is
make it a
different
month
to
then.
reset.
Just change the time. I don't know. Like I mean, decay exists for a reason. Like you can't go away for a full year, come back, you haven't played the game for a full year, and you're just as good as you were a full year ago. Like, that's just not true, right? So decay needs to exist for that type of reason. But maybe a week is ridiculous. So I agree on that. But there's a correct time somewhere. I don't know what the threshold is. Is it 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5? I don't know. But there's a correct time in there somewhere where it needs to happen, right?
That's kind of what the point is I was trying to get at is like there's clearly a time period in which you do need to reset people's ranks, but at what interval and at what scale that needs to be done is clearly the debate, right? Is like when do we need to reset everybody or do we need to reset certain people, and how hard do we reset them, how soft do we reset them, like, you know, and how frequently is it, once every 5 years, once every year, once. And clearly we will all have our opinions on like I don't know about once a year. And I agree. Once a year does sound extreme. And also to do it to everyone. Gavin says
I
on
would
the
say one thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just say, but then you can maybe flame Gavin if you want to. On the disruption side, for some transparency, in the past, we tended to see stomp rates go up for about 2 weeks after reset, then it returns to previous rates. This season has been unique in that it basically hasn't changed at all. My hypothesis on that, because it's surprising, is we have so many returning players that were making better games on average. Higher player counts make matchmakers much better at their job.
Yeah.
Interesting. But my anecdotal evidence proves that wrong.
Exactly.
So, okay, Gavin.
Screw you.
However,
I was going to interject though, like my one kind of unrelated here, but I do see this like discussion and argument, even got people in chat. Don't let the performance-based matchmaker people sneak in here with their arguments. You're not allowed here. Go back to Rivals. Frick off. Your ideas suck, and I do not respect your opinion. You cannot quantify numbers and stats as a part of a performance. They're already bad enough at doing that as it is for quick play when you're placing new accounts. But don't even bother. You perform, you win the game. You don't perform, you lose the game. The way Overwatch does it, where it's just wins and losses, is great. Don't ever change that. I don't think that'll ever change. But yes, that needs to stay the same.
It's so funny. I was so surprised that Gavin and the systems team were willing to talk to you, just because like there's so much lying to players that goes into making a good matchmaking system at a certain point. There's so many temptations to be like, well, if we just did this like this little thing and tweaked it here without telling them, they'd never work out. And it's always that temptation with like a performance based. You're like, if they never work out, then we've got performance based matchmaking. They can't exploit.
I will work it
and we
out.
can improve
I
the
will
matchmaking
find it,
quality,
and I will make a thumbnail with a big red text that says no. I listen, guys. I'm
just
fighting
lie
the
better.
Saints, man. I'm fighting the
Well,
Saints.
but this
Don't
is
they
when
thumbnail.
This is when people pull out the like, I see that Blizzard Activision has a patent for performance-based matchmaking, therefore it exists in the game. Like that was the whole era.
Spilo is threatening to pull out the tracer crying with the arrow pointing down stock.
Yes, I will do that. My 0.001% of the Overwatch player fan base that follows me will be very angry when I say what I have to say.
All
they're
8 of us
very
will
loud.
riot. All 8 of us will riot.
Yes.
No, yeah, I mean, and again, if anyone earlier thought that the praise for the dev team was shield accusations, here's the counterpoint, which is that like, I don't know, I don't know of another game where the devs are just like, yeah, by the way, that's what's going on, by the way, you know, behind the scenes. So kudos and shout out. Okay, any other? I think I had asked any other thoughts on matchmaking 10, 15 minutes ago, and then we went down another spiral. So any other thoughts on matchmaking? No, cool. Again, there's a myriad of topics that we could get into, but I'm always conscious of I'm borrowing a lot of your guys' time, so I'm not gonna just infinitely stretch out and keep asking about next thing. Let's start heading towards concluding thoughts. And again, if we want to deep dive into more specific things, I'm always happy to host you guys again. So for now, let's talk, short to medium term future. How do we see Overwatch shaping up? Obviously this is peak time for Overwatch, right? It's new heroes, big, new updates, and it's everything flashy, new toys. We ditched the 2, we're back to Overwatch. Everybody come play. But will that peter out? Will they be able to keep the pace? We've already mentioned that there kind of some things are sort of coming apart and breaking at the seams due to the rapid nature of how much content we're getting. So how do you see the short to medium term future for Overwatch playing out? I'll go to AVRL first. AVRL.
I think as long as they can keep up the quality standard without cutting too many corners, like Spilo's been saying, then I'm cool with it. I mean, I'm a little bit worried about how many heroes are coming out. When I first heard what the potential projection of a future schedule was going to look like, was damn. Context, I'm very against the Rivals cadence of their releases, and not just because it's Rivals. I just think in a vacuum, their cadence of what do they do, 1 a month? It's insane. That's ridiculous. The stability of your game is going to be completely questionable at that point. I would not want that. I think 1-2 months is about the maximum I'd be willing to do. This 5 heroes on a drop and then 10 overall for the year, I'm okay with that as a one-off. I don't know that I would be happy with 10 heroes a year every year. I think I want to make sure that the level of quality is remaining consistent, and that we, even getting 6 a year, that all 6 of them are held to the same level of quality that we've had when we had 3 per year. I mean, I'm okay with 6 a year is the upper limit, but I wouldn't want to see higher than that personally. I do want to have some stability in the game where you can sort of enjoy a stable period of the game without things getting wild and just changing rapidly every single month.
That makes sense. And you're otherwise overall pretty happy with the way the direction is moving?
Oh, for sure. The whole dropping the 2 and coming back to this, and this 2026 vision of Overwatch, the first time I even heard it was happening was holy shit, this is going to be insane. This is going to be the biggest thing ever. And lo and behold, we get here and it literally is. So yeah, I was waiting for this moment for so long. And I think if we can just keep this going and keep the momentum up, not make mistakes, ideally. I mean, that's maybe asking for a lot, but make very little mistakes, fix things quickly, respond quickly, communicate as much as they already have been communicating, and just being honest with their player base, which they have been, which has been good. I don't see any reason why the momentum will stop. So I think the momentum can definitely keep going for quite a while.
Great. And to round off the previous discussion, Gavin's last, I think, contribution to this says, the truth is that performance-based modifiers at least is super seductive, because if it worked and was accurate, that would be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
But
right?
But we still don't feel like we have a good answer to that for our game. It may be very solvable for less asymmetric games. Which, yeah, again, he's right. If you had a perfect way of figuring it out, of course it'd be perfect, right? It would be awesome, because you could have finally the trolling Genji in your team get punished while you, the honorable Ana player, gets rewarded. So, sure, it's appealing in theory. Okay, Realth, how do you feel about the sort of short to medium term future of the game?
If the other guy has a snow plow, don't come in with a shovel and try and do the same job. Do a different job. If Rivals is going to put out quantity, put out quality, in my mind, over anything else, because you will not compete against China with production schedule in the long run. You need to compete against them with that and quality at the same time. Now, you do these big pushes, then do the pull. Go back and fix the things that you have broken by doing this crazy push for media, because you will lose people through, and what people remember is they remember the peak experiences and the really, really bad experiences. Those are the two things that people tend to remember about a video game. So like if you end up with a situation where somebody remembers, oh, there was that time where when a jetpack cat had a Reinhardt and put it into the back line, and he was holding shield for like 20 seconds and then he shattered us all and we died and I couldn't interact with him. I don't know if they're going to be willing to come back next time you do this big push. So cut the really, really bad stuff off at the knees a bit faster, in my mind. That's my completely unsolicited advice as a non-expert. Aside from that, keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. Give me some love.
Yeah, there you go.
What a shill.
Yeah, he wants to shill. No, he's asking to shill. He's like, please pay me, please. I want the money.
Not pay me. Just take the bull bloody roll through perk out. Take the DPS passive off of 30%, please. I'm drowning here. just throw me a buoy or something.
Philo, how about you? What's your short to medium term assessment?
So there's a term in the sports training fitness world called periodization, where essentially it's to everything there is a season, right? We have strength, speed, max velocity, performance, power, whatever else. My wife has actually gone through that recently because she's competing right now in Florida at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. And so she's basically been like, whether it's with like managing her weight or performance or strength, like she wants to peak right during the tournament. But a lot of that, it's very draining on your CNS. And so you don't want to, like, you need to have like recovery periods or like rehabilitation or strength training, but you kind of have to have these cycles of focus. And kind of what Realth is talking about is I think it's really important that Overwatch maintains these content maxing periods. Like, I think like what we did with Spotlight, like, I think, especially as somebody that my living is partly from this game, we need those moments. We need those slop public PR marketing fanboy craziness, because that's what keeps this game relevant, fun, and gets people to try the game. And honestly, I enjoy them too. I'm not an idiot. I like new things. Me like new things. It's fun, right? But like what Rel said is you can't stay at that position like Marvel Rivals, to what AVRL was saying, you can't stay there forever. You just physically can't as an organization. You have to go through these cycles where you can't maximize both content and quality at the same time. So you can't have the live service fan base play your game all the time. Like, quite literally you can't, because they're going to move on. They're going to get bored. It doesn't matter how much more content you put out there. So you expect that the tide coming in and out, and you go, okay, the hardcore players like these, like this, or even just the addicts to quick play or arcade, or say the people that love Overwatch are going to stay. So what can we do to improve their experience as best as we possibly can in preparation for the next content cycle? So obviously I'm not an expert. I don't know when those cycles need to happen and when they don't, but I definitely think that when we talk about hero cadence, I don't think you need a hero every month. I don't think you need a hero every season. We don't need to be hitting that content maxing cadence at this frequency. Certainly not when it's literally double, triple what we've had in years prior. That's just not necessary, and you're not going to get that back again. And so there is a very reasonable skepticism from people like us in this call of like maintaining that level of quality, because I mean, it is starting to show a few cracks. So I know Alex said, I think in his interview with Deemsies, the Omnic Post, shout out to that guy, he's a really good dude. He's basically said that they're not sure what the cadence is. They think it might be once a season, but they're not 100% certain. And I hope that they're open to just saying, hey, we tried it for a year. It was pretty rough. We're going to try to really it may not work. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. So content max, quality max. Take a deep breath. Push hard. Take a deep breath. Clean up your crap. Rework your heroes. Rework the maps. Try new things. Clean up the perk system. Sound design, visual design, art design. Look at your skin system. Like, everything can be cleaned up. And I hope that we maintain something like that. What that cadence is, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good advice, and I think collating what I've heard from you guys, what I've heard from the previous podcast we did where we talked about Overwatch and Rivals together. I think, and you know, obviously the elephant in the room is that Marvel Rivals exists and is like a huge competitor for Overwatch, right? Like, I think some people, there's a genre of people who get very upset when the two are mentioned in the same breath, because, you know, either they are vehemently fans of one game or the other, or they just resent the bringing up of the other game when talking about their game. But the truth is, the reality is, it's like, you know, it's like you're like making Apple phones or like Google phones. Like, you have to kind of have the discussion, right? Like, you can't pretend that they don't exist. And I think that, like, Overwatch will have a slightly different fan base to what Marvel Rivals will have, in the sense that Marvel Rivals fans, and this is what I gather from talking to the Rivals creators, they're a bit more flimsy, they're a bit more fair weather fans, right? They kind of are very happy to just pop in for the week of the new release, and then they kind of dip, because they're really only here for the cheap thrill, as you may call it. Cheap is a pejorative term perhaps, but the cheap thrill of, oh, it's the new guy, look at what he does, funny, crazy, silly.
Novelty.
And then the novelty, right? It's the shiny new toy. Whereas I think what Overwatch has now successfully done, we spoke for years about how difficult it would be and could be and maybe impossible for Overwatch to repair its reputation. I still don't think that's like ever truly possible, because you don't go from being the golden child of the entire industry and the entire world to being the most hated, vile piece of shit, you know, garbage, and then you go back to being the golden child. That just doesn't happen. But Overwatch has done a huge and huge credit to the dev team, huge credit to Aaron and his team and the leadership and everybody involved, like the devs on every level. And I think we kind of gravitate towards citing the big figures like Jeff and Aaron, but obviously I think Aaron is the first person to say it's a whole team effort. Like, it's everybody. It's the fact that, like, it's Gavin in our chat, it's Megan coordinating everyone, it's all the devs who don't publicly appear but are doing tremendous work with passion. So, like, shout out to those guys for turning around what is a really difficult ship. But I think they need to, like, not be hasty. If I could give them advice from a complete layman, I would say, like, you're building your reputation now on being a game that's surprisingly fun. That's what I see as the sentiment as an outsider looking in. People are like, yo, surprisingly, Overwatch holds up. Like, it actually plays well. From my perspective, I will be blunt, it feels very similar to what I played 2 years ago. Like, my frustrations are very similar. So probably what we're seeing is the public giving it a chance that they weren't 2 years ago. And I do think they've made improvements. I think they made lots of small improvements. My criticisms remain that, like, it still kind of feels like I'm playing the same game. And that's all, like, the reasons why I stopped playing that same game are still there. Like, it hasn't improved it in that level. But it has improved enough that the guy who's quit 6 years ago and hated it then, for other reasons perhaps even beyond just the gameplay, is now like, yo, actually, this is actually pretty fun. Like, I'm surprised. The Tim the Tapmans of the world that AVRL cited earlier, who's now trying to convince his chat, like, no, chat, it's really fun now. Actually, I'm not being paid to play it anymore. I actually want to play it. So I think the worst thing they could do now, again, just my layman advice, is, like, don't now go chasing Marvel Rivals to be like, we need to not, like, you did a great job of, like, hey, look at us, 5 heroes. But now you don't need to be like, we need to also release a hero every month and also release, like, this other thing, and we need to tie in, and we need it. I think this is when, as Spilo kind of said, we now turn inwards and we just quality control. Like, let's make sure this game remains slick and awesome to play. Like, the performance issue stuff, for example, is actually really important in this regard, because that's one of the things that really puts people off Marvel Rivals, is how badly optimized the game is and how, like, the experience of playing it sucks. And I'm like, whoa, why am I getting these, like, I'm playing it, like, you know, normally 140 FPS, which isn't even that high, and then it'll drop to like 60. And I'm like, what is happening? Why am I in this team fight? Am I playing 60? Like, that's actually big. Like, that's what gets people to be like, eh.
Yeah.
People said it was good.
With anti-cheat, since it's not on the Chinese servers, people have worked out it's not happening there on some of it.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure they know. I'm sure they are aware of this. But, like, that's the things I think now we turn inward and we say, let's make sure the game is a banger. Let's make sure we, like, make sure the balance is good, the perks are good, the bans are good. Let's like really just, like, turn inward. And once we solidify again, then we go once more. Then we're like, okay, now let's make another push to be like, hey, normies, our game is really good. You know, don't just keep making our games really good and then actually quietly before you realize the game's no longer really that good. So that's my long rant of, like, what I would like to see as just someone who roots for Overwatch. I don't even, you know, I don't know if I'm going to continue. I don't know my genuine future of, like, how long I continue to make Overwatch content. I don't know how long what I do with it, but, like, I'll always root for the game that gave me a career. Like, I'll always root for the game that gave me such amazing memories. So, like, I'm not going to be one of those guys who has to turn bitter about it. And it's like, I don't make Overwatch content, therefore I hope it fails and burns and crashes. So that's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. So I'll let you guys chime in now. I ranted for quite a while.
Just like Ryan Reynolds says, you'll be doing this till you're 90. Once you're Overwatch, you'll be Overwatch forever. So welcome back, welcome home. No, I think that's good that the game is like the DNA of the game is retained from when you last played 2 years ago, and the DNA of the game should be retained 2 years from now and however many years from now, so that like
Agreed.
you know
Yes,
what
I agree.
Overwatch is.
I agree.
Yeah, like you don't want the game to be wildly different. You don't want to come in back in 2 years and now Stadium is all you can play and the regular Overwatch you remember is gone. Right? You want the core DNA of Overwatch to be intact throughout its entire lifespan, which we hope is going to be a long time. So.
Yeah, no,
My
I 100%
analogy,
agree.
which I always use, is Age of Empires, right? Age of Empires 2, the game is like, what, 27 years old or something like that? And it's actually got a pretty decent trickle of content that comes out. And it's, hit or miss for quality, mostly pretty good. But it's the same freaking game. And it's actually done really well 27 years later because it stayed true to the competitive priority that, like, initially what made a lot of people like it, right? So it's still a little content pilled, but it's pretty good content, and they do a really good job of making sure that it's relatively balanced all the way through. And that's like my vision for Overwatch. Like AVRL was saying, it's still going to feel like Overwatch, but there will be new and shiny things, and then they're going to make those new and shiny things work really, really well.
Yes, I think it's a very relevant point, and I should have added that as well. That like actually, there's not necessarily a need to please someone like me, because it's like my beef might actually just be fundamental. It's like I don't know if there's anything Overwatch could do that would make me be like, what, I fell in love again, 2016 again, because I think I might just be over this type of game. Like I think that's just like your relationship as a person involves. Like I think that's another thing I wish more people would accept, is like you may have liked a game once upon a time, but if you stop liking it, doesn't mean it's the game's fault. Doesn't mean that like they have to adhere to exactly what you say. Maybe you just move on, right? But Realth, anything else you want to add to this whole topic?
No, I think I'm mostly okay. I think the Overwatch team is smashing it out the park, and as long as they go fix Sombra, go fix Roadhog, don't let bans be an excuse to leave stuff in a simmering low level of bad instead of just making it a little bit better with just numbers tweaks, I think the game's going to do amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that note, guys, any final thoughts before I let you get going?
Thank you, SVB. And I'm going to shout out the Soak YouTube channel for you, because you put out some banger content. Me and my wife really enjoy your video essays. You do a great job, mate. And I don't know how well it's promoted on your main channel, but for those Group Up podcast fans that love high quality video essay stuff, check it out. It's good stuff.
Very kind of you, very kind of you. I'm kind of deep in research. I've been, the next video is probably going to be like an hour plus. I've got like 15,000 word document with the script and the notes.
Can you leak the topic? Like, maybe not the like what over what media it is.
So the title is probably going to. So the title is probably going to be The Book That Ruined a Generation of Men, and it's about a book called The Game, if you've ever heard of it, which is about pickup artists. So it's all about pickup artists and their depiction in media, because obviously it's a media analysis channel. So,
and are you pro or con?
Hopefully from context it was apparent that I will be critiquing them and not championing their bits, but maybe there's some sick tips in there on how to get laid.
He'll be sending out signed copies, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm actually coming out with my rival book, of the game. It's going to be a different pickup artist book, so yeah, that's
Marvel Rivals book. You heard it here first.
So there you go. There's a sneak preview. But for now, on the podcast, thank you very much to Spilo, Realth, and AVRL for joining me. As always, guys, please go show them some love. Please go watch their content, follow their socials, and just tell them how much you enjoyed having them. For all the haters who love being like, why the fuck did you invite XYZ to the podcast, and why did you let him talk and her not talk? Show some love too in the comments. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for so much of your time. Hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of your day. Yeah. Peace out.
Thank you very much.
Take care, y'all.